Yeah, I'm like worried.
Okay, so you can tell me what I can do.
All right, welcome everybody. We will call the meeting to order. And happy to have those here who are ready to participate in our public hearing portion. So,
It is screen
that's what
share.
we'll begin with, the public
One
hearing portion of our
participant at a
meeting,
time.
the proposed amendments to 2023 fiscal year budget. Do we have anybody here that wishes to make any public comment on that point? And anybody? Ben, you're online and you're here?
Yes, to go in double duty.
Wow, okay.
It's easier for my presentation to just share it via Zoom.
Gotcha. Okay, well,
Or was
with,
anybody online that wanted to do it? Just those three are on, huh?
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, well, with that, we will close the public hearing portion of our meeting and open our work session. I thought Lance was here on behalf of Salem, but then I remembered who Lance was. And, but item 1, presentation and discussion, proposed upgrades to Maple Canyon Well, Salem Public Works. Corbett, do we have a representative that's coming, or is he or she not here?
He's still trying to get the details from his engineering.
Oh, okay.
He's still trying to drive through the construction to get up.
Yeah.
Right?
As soon as I get it, I'll let everybody know.
Okay, well, then we will table that one, yeah. All right, we'll jump right to item 2, discussion on the fuel reduction program by our chief, Greg.
All right, well, thanks for the time. A couple things that we've got going on within the city is we're getting to the point where insurance companies are gonna start charging more for homes in the Wildland Urban Interface. We're already seeing some residents that are starting to lose their insurance or they're making them buy riders. It's gonna be my ISO that we just finished up. We just finished up 2020, my ISO rating, and we got the report, and we're currently sitting at a 4. Highest you get to 1, and they don't take into account any trees. So it could be New York City or us. We could both have a 4. And so in 2025, my next ISO review will have a wildland urban interface module. Now they're gonna start looking at trees, wildfire protection, fuel reduction. So we need to get ahead of this, making our city safer, doing education through programs, through training, on training our residents, just what we could really benefit from cleaning up our lots. And it'll benefit everybody. So when they do come to us with this wildland urban interface module, we will be ahead of the game. I mean, we're already CWPP, we're a Firewise community. We do a lot of fuel reduction programs in the city. So we're ahead of the game, but we're still, there's more that we can do. We really haven't pushed it. So part of our fuel reduction program has been our fire crews that are going out. We hired Lance as an engine boss and 2 firefighters this year. Put them in our brush truck. And these are pretty much the final numbers from this year.
Thank you.
So you don't think they'll go again on anything? Is it officially over?
Yes, yeah, they'll be done they'll be done this week. It goes basically from April 15th to October 15th. So what it shows here is we were on a total of 9 fires. Now, a couple fires were one day. And like the one we just went on to Idaho, we made $364. I don't even know if we made that. I don't have the total final numbers in on that. So when you go up to Idaho and drive there, they don't pay for fuel. But basically, if you look at the bottom line, by the time I paid for wages, fuel, food, I did the main repairs in here. I had a $3,000 repair on the first fire. Had some truck engine problems down in Colorado. And then I repumped it, I put a new pump in it. It's a basic pump, it's very similar to a new brush truck. The components are easy to get, so if they're on a fire and that pump goes down, Forest Service usually has those pumps. So we can get it. I'll probably end up stocking an extra one, it's just a simple pump head. And so that was the thing. I've got some other things that we had to order, an upgraded radio for the truck. But after I paid for all the maintenance and everything, we ended up clearing about, what, $98,000. So the way I look at the program is I added up, if I hire the 3 firefighters back next year, and I pay them from April 15th to October 15th, 8 hours a day, and they go on 0 fires. The wages would be $89,000 for wages for 3 firefighters. Now, they would be in the city doing fuel reduction work. That's worst case scenario. If there's no fires anywhere, that ain't gonna happen. It just,
Was it would you say it was a light year or a heavy year for fires?
it was a weird year.
Yeah, it was.
So, I was just talking with county this morning, it was a strange year for them also. They did some fires, they just did one that they ran up Idaho just like we did. They run up there, and then they got kicked right back the next day.
That's the one in Salmon.
No, this was on, up in Weiser.
Oh, on the other
The
side.
Dennett. This was the Dennett fire, they were on the Moose fire, and I think the Moose fire just flared up again because they're asking for engines again.
Provo went to Salmon,
A
that's why. I was
couple other things that I'm looking at is working with Santaquin is interested, maybe Norfolk, is splitting a season. My firefighters in the beginning of the year use our truck, they go out. When the switchover period happens, our firefighters go over to Santaquin. They keep going out because typically you can keep going to California. Texas has a couple of good ones going now. So the possibility is there. So then we wouldn't have to stop the program at that October 15th. And we could continue making some money. I didn't get out on any EMAC fires this year. Everything was IROC. EMAC pays better. Could have sent an engine this year to Florida about a week and a half ago, but that's just for another time. If we ever have an extra engine, I mean, it's something we could look at. Engines pay a lot more than a brush truck. So, but what I'd like to see, if we could do a fuel reduction program in the city that's self-sustaining, and we don't have to take anything out of our budget, this would be the way to run it. We take what I made this year, we push it in, we cover all next year's wages. Now, we're not panicked if they're not going on a fire. Because one thing that I have been told about these programs, don't count on it. Because you will have a year that your fires are low. And then we're stuck. And then you have to lay people off, and then it's hard to get people back to work. But if we keep them busy, because if we're slow fire-wise, so is everybody else. We've got a good reputation. I mean, Lance is doing a good job on the fires. As far as communicate with everybody, we're trying to build our, what am I looking for?
Reputation.
What's that?
Reputation.
Reputation. So, which is gonna be very important. County's got us on the radar, Norfolk's got us on the radar, Santaquin has us on the radar. So, if we just continue to work that, it'll work. And it's a good chance for us to sustain and keep a fire reduction program going. And then after we build that front end money, the profits and stuff, I don't really care, it's up to you guys. I mean, if you wanna do something at the park, or, I think it'd be a good time to spend the one-time monies if we can just get ahead of the game and not fall behind. And I think this year, if we can push all this into next year's wages, I think it's gonna put us in that position. And I look back at this year, if there's something I'd change, and there's really nothing that I would change, but there's a ton that I learned. Both Lance and I, we learned a lot. So next year, we're gonna hit the ground running. If we do decide to do this, we're gonna start hiring in December. We're talking about putting a wildlife class together so we can bring in individuals, put on a wildlife class, and if Lance teaches it, we get to pick the cream of the crop if they wanna come work here. And if we can keep a good program going, we'll attract firefighters. And, you know, you can have one truck, we can add trucks, but, I mean, we were fortunate because we were able to start this with grant money. I paid all the wages out this year. I paid about $22,000. Our grant covered those wages of the firefighters. The rest of the time, they were out of the city earning money from the fire. So, I really don't see a downside to it. Except for if we fall behind and have to start pulling it out of the general budget. That'll mess us up. But when we're talking fuel reduction programs, even, you know, Lance has put in requests for some equipment. So when they go down and they clear out the trees, you know, they have some good weed eaters that they go ahead and just weed eat the grass at the same time. Right now, I've got to send Mike down, and it could be done all at once. We could start hiring the group out if we have a resident that wants to clean the lot up, do a reduced rate. There's nothing to stop us from doing that. I've already talked to Dave over in Norfolk. He's got grant monies next year. He's talking about paying our guys to come over and do fuel reduction work. So that's no longer coming out of any of our budget, but we're keeping them employed. And when the fire goes, off they go. So it's.
So Craig, what you're saying is if this works and it gets to a certain level of revenue coming in, instead of having 3 seasonal firefighters for fuel reduction, April 15th through October 15th, they would become a contracted employee year-round?
No.
Still keep
No,
it,
we would still,
the
if the
15th
state
and the
this
15th.
many, there's some, it's goofy. Because everybody's in the same boat. All the firefighters are leaving this week,
right,
except for the full-timers. Well, you have to start paying benefits and stuff like that if you keep them on full round.
right.
And it's, I mean, yeah.
So it'll still stay April 15th to
No.
October 15th because of that. If
Now,
they choose to go work the California Fire, whatever, they would become their seasonal employee.
and then a lot of the firefighters, like county, a lot of their guys work the ski resorts in the winter. So they do the fire in the summer, and then they go skiing in the winter.
A lot of them.
And so, it's a benefit for some of these guys. I mean, they just wanna work that slot. But who knows what it'd grow into? I mean, that's just it. I mean, if we can see a revenue generator, I mean, it just keep going. I mean, if you add another truck, just the only thing that I would like is if we could preload all the wages and some maintenance money, so I don't have to stress over it.
Understood.
Well, I watched this year and the fuel reduction in our city was like more than I've ever seen it. When you see the park that was done, lot of stuff come out of the park that made it look better. They did a lot of chipping, they did a lot of chipping everywhere, but they did some up by the water tanks. They did some over in the gully, the Snell gully that we've talked about.
Yeah, they've done a lot of work.
A whole lot of chipping on Woodland Hills property, which is important that we.
See, and we've had the state chipper this year almost exclusively. I mean, I lose it tomorrow morning, they promise it out to somebody, but I've talked them into keeping it here, and if somebody ends up needing it, a lot of times I'll have Mike run the chipper to them. So, but it keeps it here, so we just I'll use it as long as I can, and, then kick it out, and we didn't have to pay for it. But I don't see that changing for a little while.
Could we get reports on, what's been chipped and then report that out?
How much?
Because I think that's something we should be sharing. Hey, we mitigated, here this big swath
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
So,
tell everybody.
I can do that with the dumpsters because I can add up the dumps. They tell you the tonnage,
Yeah.
and that's easy. The chip piles,
Well, I'm saying not numbers, but just like a map. You just highlight an area. When Lance and his crew has been out there for a month, for a week, just say, hey, this is now
well, it's
been.
like the one that Doral had the other day that
Yeah,
showed
his video.
that outline. And you guys don't know how much work it is dragging this wood out. And if
Yeah.
you should take time to walk down through Snell Canyon, and it feels like a park. I mean, the work that they've done down there, and the ladder fuels that they've removed out of that canyon, it's crazy how much work they've done.
Should we put a trail in there?
Yeah, you actually could, we have 20 acres there. You just have to buy Chris Helvey's property for access.
You'll donate it. Hi, Chris.
So it actually, to get into that though, Snell Canyon runs down our property drainage. It'll bump up against Summit Creek a little bit at the bottom by their trail. And then it goes right into the Hanks Ranch, right at his water well. So there's always a possibility to extend that. And it's pretty secluded. You get down in there, you can't see the homes above you. So
That's cool.
take some time and walk down there. It's amazing.
You used to couldn't walk through it.
Right.
It
You
was
couldn't
so
walk
full of
It's so
stuff.
thick.
So
Maybe we need a field trip.
Is there still firewood stuff down there?
is it what?
Is there still
Oh, yeah.
wood?
Yeah, there's not a ton, but I think those big logs are still down there, right?
No, there's a little bit of it left.
Yeah. But we have some at the well, going up the well road.
I have wood, but if anyone else wants some.
Yeah. We've got some still that people haven't gathered going up the well road. This year, we're hoping to burn a couple of those because we have all that debris from the avalanche that's sitting up there, and county's offered to come up and help burn that.
Yeah,
It just has to be right. I mean,
we were waiting for it to be a little more moist or maybe
oh,
even snow.
yeah, we'll wait till there's a bunch of snow on the ground. It'll be
So
definitely
do you
winter.
want us to let people know that they can take that wood out at the well?
Yeah,
Okay.
Lots of people have wood stoves up here, I'm sure they appreciate it.
There's
It's
pile-
green though, right? They'll have to let it sit.
some of it's green, some is dead, but it'd probably be better if they burned it next year. A lot of maple, a lot of big maple.
Well, thank you, Craig, and I just want to say thanks for all your efforts on this, because I know that you've been working on this for a long time, and I think that it's showing that it was a good call, and
Well, we've had a good crew. I mean, Lance has been awesome.
and thanks to Lance, too.
Yeah, he's easy to work with. So, matter of fact, I got his number from Janet, and so it's worked out, and I'd really like to see it move forward.
Well, and
I think we can.
I think too, it's benefited our city, but also one of the things that I think has been really advantageous is because on the state level, we've been talking about fire and fire reduction, and everyone's always whining about the city's not doing anything, and so when I give them our report and the things that we're doing and our ordinances, and and the 3 firefighters coming in and fuel reduction and all of this, and some of those at the Capitol are dropping their jaw saying, really, your little city's doing all of that? And so it's really great to be able to highlight those things and tell them that if they want to see a model, they can just look to us, and that we're not perfect, but we're trying and we're doing everything that we can, and our citizens are engaged. I mean, we have a lot of fuel reduction every year because they know we're gonna have chipper. There's no question about it. They always just clamor on, when's chipper, right? For 2 months before we even can start. And so I think all of that work over the last decade has gotten to be the norm for our city, and citizens are prepared, and they work really hard, and thanks for your leadership on that.
Well, I mean, it's definitely a group event. I mean, it's the citizens have done, the citizens who have made the difference. I mean, I just have a relationship with people, but the citizens have done the work. And the work that they've done I'm
Other
telling
cities
you,
do not have this.
we're leading the state in fuel reduction work, and because of the residents.
People always ask me, how do you get your residents to do it? We tell them this is chipper day, and they put it all out, and we really make it a group.
Repetitive.
Yeah, it's repetitive,
Every year.
and everybody does it, and you see your
That's what
neighbors
works.
doing it, and you're gonna do it, and you drive up and down your street, and other people have done it, so you're like, oh yeah, I gotta get mine out, and it really has worked.
Yeah. So if you have questions on it, concerns or anything, just call me. I mean, come in, I'll sit down with you. I mean, next year will be a different year, but I'm hoping that we hit the ground running and, yeah, we'll be ready.
I appreciate you thinking outside of the box, because I feel like in our city, that's what we have to do, right? We have to think of little ways to raise money, so.
Well, it's a good way. I mean, I was hoping it'd work. You know?
Well, that's a pretty good chunk too. After paying everything, that's what's left over, that's pretty good.
That is good. Yeah, I'm very happy with how it's gone. I mean, I can't imagine it being better, but, you know, guys out there are telling me it can be better. So, but, all right,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
All right, anybody have any other comments or questions before we let Frank take a seat? Okay, too late. All right. Item 3, EMT contract, Rachel Skinner.
Okay, so we have been looking for ways to give our people more experience. So one of the things that we have done, I run down in Salem, and so I kind of facilitated this. We have several of our EMTs now who have signed up with Salem, and some run a regular shift down there, and others are just doing fill-in. So Salem has been super thankful for that because it helps them out, but then it helps us out as well because it gives us more experience and more calls. And it has really helped the working relationship between the two departments because they respond to all our calls, and it's really helped the level of trust. The other thing that we have the opportunity to do now, and this is the contract, is the hospital at Mountain View is opening up a program to the EMT providers that we can actually go into the hospital and work shifts in the hospital, in the ER, in the cath lab, in same-day surgery.
Which hospital are you talking about?
Mountain View.
Okay.
So it's gonna be an HCA thing. So I mean, technically we could go to Tim but I'm sure we'll just stay in basic.
Define what it means for an EMT to work in that kind of environment. What are you doing?
So it's volunteer, but they're gonna let us do anything that is under our EMT license that we're allowed to do on an ambulance, we can do in the hospital. So that will be different between the advanced and the basics, but, you know, especially for the advanced, you can go in and put in 15 IVs in a shift and get good at it, you know? For the basics, a lot of it is just doing patient assessment and learning to recognize.
So the contract then is for our people to be able to go to the hospital, fill in, or get extra experience.
Right,
as a
and so it's not
volunteer.
even gonna be, like, we won't fill in for their shifts,
Okay,
but we will tag along
okay, that
on
makes
their
sense.
shifts. And so,
Job shadowing kind of.
job shadowing kind of a thing, but they are, so my contact there is Chris Shields, and she is the EMT liaison with the hospital, and she is a great advocate for the EMT. She feels really strongly about letting them do a lot of stuff, so, and being really hands-on there. So it's a great opportunity.
She's a good trainer down there.
Oh, she's awesome. Yeah.
Really awesome.
She's awesome. She's been an
Teaches
ER nurse forever, but
pediatric
she's
care.
also been,
It's really cool.
she's run as an EMT down in Juab forever, and she's really cool. So, but part of that is that one of the things that we have to sign for each person is that we have, I'll read it to you, that we own a background check on them. So all the EMTs to get certified with the state have to have a background check, but we don't do that in the city. And this,
So they require a background check, but we do not in our city?
so this is
Interesting.
why I'm here. Right, so we're going to start doing that. So I've been talking to Deputy Dutson. We're gonna do it through the sheriff's office. It's gonna be $15 per background check. Talking to Craig, we're gonna do it for both the EMTs and the fire. Everybody on the department. I know that people, what we've decided is that only our deputy will have access to it, and then we'll tell Craig and myself whether they passed or not, but we won't actually have access.
If they don't pass, you're just gonna say, hey,
Right.
come over here, why aren't you passing?
I mean, I don't care why you're not. That's not my business. That's above my pay grade. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and passing and not passing, is it something that is in the job description, right?
Right,
Like there might be something on there that is not going to affect this, but things like sexual abuse, domestic violence, those kind of things, we're definitely not going to take them in people's homes.
right.
But I don't want to know everybody's background,
So
so
they-
we'll just have the
The
deputy
deputy will deal with that then.
and just let us know, you know.
Sorry, they're gone.
Yeah, or they can be hired, or, whatever. They can.
So, assuming I have a concealed permit and others do on the department, that is already a background check. Does that mean you might save some money on some people?
No, because,
Okay.
and actually,
Background check.
those of us, right, so those of us who work in Salem does it, we've been background checked by the state and by Salem separately. But this contract says that we as a city have to, have ownership of the background check, that we did it ourselves. And I think, fire doesn't have that, it's just a good idea, it's just a good idea that anybody, especially who is going into other people's homes, and that we have background checks on our people.
No, I just.
I don't wanna know.
Yeah.
I don't wanna know.
I'm just
Background is
teasing.
checked monthly, I feel like, so.
Yeah.
Rachel,
Yeah.
are you there? This is the voice from above. Hey, so the $15, is that just for the scan and then the BCI checks like 70? Did they talk about that?
So, this is what Deputy Dutson told me. He just said, that it will conduct a background check that checks Utah criminal history only, and the cost is $15.
And then will the city be paying that or will each individual person be paying that?
So we'll pay for it, it'll come out of our budgets.
Okay, I would double check on the BCI check because their prices keep going up and up and up. And then also, if we write a policy on this, we ought to maybe consider doing this every 3 years, have everybody just go through every 3 years. The other nice thing about BCI is if something happens, they will notify us. So if somebody a year from now has a background
So
check.
is that separate than going through, do we go through somebody besides the sheriff's office, or is that still through them?
No, so I believe the sheriff's office is just doing the fingerprints. Then they send it up to the Bureau of Criminal Investigations, which Dora was just talking about. And that's where their kind of all background checks are housed.
Excellent.
Is Officer Dustin there or is he gone?
No, he's not. He wasn't here. He just sent me a text.
He
He's
only
been
comes
talking.
every other time. once a
Yeah,
month
he's been
to us.
just talking to his contact there. He was trying, and I don't know if this is a reduced price. He was gonna see what kind of a deal he could get for us, and that was what they could do. So I don't know what that entails more than he told me. So this contract did go through our lawyer, and he had a couple of suggestions for them. They adopted what he suggested, and so this is just the final contract, and it's, I mean, pretty straightforward as far as like, we have liability insurance on all of our people, you know, we'll follow HIPAA, they will provide the training that we need beforehand, those kind of things, you know.
Great, thank you, Rachel.
So, if I understand, you're gonna use your own budget for the budget that we've allocated for this already, so you're not asking for additional funds, this is more,
It's the easiest thing you'll ever do.
you're letting us know that we're gonna do background checks on the fire department now. That's
On the
pretty much
EMTs.
what you're
And
saying.
the fire.
Oh, and fine.
And the fire.
Can I recommend, just until we take one person all the way through the process, maybe we just start with one person
And see what that looks like.
and see what that looks like, make sure we understand fully what fees or whatever are involved. And then once we're
Oh,
confident
the
in the
background
process.
process, not
is
going getting to the
15 months,
hospital?
It really is, because we had to do it, I've had to do it for different things. It's
Yeah,
not
I
much.
have to.
I've had to do
Anyway.
it.
I feel like I have it in writing now from Deputy Doug. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I don't
Yes,
hold it
I'm
to
just-
it.
I'm just saying,
Right,
start
exactly.
with one person.
Yeah,
get 'em
instead of
through the whole
saying,
thing,
everybody get in there.
And then,
next
once you
week.
know what the process is, then we can hand the forms out to everybody in a meeting and say, okay, everybody, here you go.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that'd be a good idea, because then we can write our SOP or SOG off of that guideline, because we'll have to do that into the fire department manual, and just to make it legal. So, yeah, I don't mind doing it. If we-
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be a big deal,
Yeah.
and we'll just have to sit down and maybe talk to the lawyer about which things specifically preclude people from serving on the department, or, you know, those kind of restrictions, but we'll spell it out. And,
Very good. Well, any other questions?
What do you
Sure.
pencil in?
The background check would be, I think, a good thing to implement for new city employees as well. To apply that in the future. There won't be very many of them, but I think it would be good for us to make that inquiry just to satisfy ourselves of who we're hiring here to help in that process.
Especially if they're handling money.
yeah, but I'm not paying for theirs.
She's so generous. Are you kidding? The fire department has extra money now.
They're big.
That's fuel reduction money.
Well, what if someone's an arson?
I am not paying that money, so.
I'll pay for it. If you find an arsonist, I will cover the fee.
I will come to it. That's awesome. And what we'll do is we'll just split up, because the vast majority of our people are cross-trained, which is almost, I mean, for a volunteer agency, that is very unique. It's very unique for a volunteer agency to be so dual trained. So we'll just split up between fire and EMT and whatever budget, so.
Great.
Awesome, thanks.
Thanks, Rachel. Okay, item 4, city budgetary items. So, Carrie, I think that we'll start with you because you had a specific request concerning the budget, which is driving our opening it, and then we'll turn it over to Chris.
Yes, so Chris and I had some conversations, I guess it was, or it might have been just emails, Recently, there's a couple of allocations of funding that we have received. One is the ARPA funding, which is our federal funding that comes straight to the city from the US Treasury. It's the money that can only be used for a very, very specific purpose. It was basically the second round of COVID. We had CARES money that we had at the beginning that we could use for COVID-related expenses. A lot of those went to the EMT program and firefighter program, as well as our sound system here in this room. The ARPA money came in 2 tranches. It came from the federal government directly to our city, as I said, based on population size. So we received our first tranche last year in the summer, about $94,000, and we will get our second tranche, or we just got our second tranche, I should say. And so I have asked Chris if we can have that as a line item so that we can see where that money is. He or Lori, I don't know if they've decided which one will be the reporting mechanisms. By law, it has to be someone who is over finance in the city, and they report directly to the Treasury to make sure that we're in compliance with what that money can be used for. We are currently looking at some matching grant money that the state has said that we'll be putting out some matching grant money again. And theirs are only going, last year it was for a lot of different projects. This year it's going to be specifically water infrastructure related. Last year we put it in for it last year, they had $1 billion worth of requests for $500 million of money. So they're hoping to do another $500 million, and well, maybe it's not even, maybe it's only $50 million this year. But we have a better chance because we have let the state know, Ted and I are working on this, that 100% of our ARPA money would be used as a match to our water projects. We know we have additional water projects coming, and water has to pay for water, and we don't want to have to increase our water rates if we can get this match from them, and it might be even more than our specific amount, but by showcasing that we're willing to give our all for water, they're looking very favorably to us. So I've asked him to put that as a line item on here for that tranche of those 2 tranches of money. The second one is, as you know, we received a grant from UDOT for community development, and we've been going forward with that, and using that grant money, we have hired a planner that is helping us with some things, and we have also hired some facilitators, and we are going forward with scope of work to make sure that we are going in the direction that we want. We will be doing some focus groups and some other activities, which I will keep you informed of as it progresses. Each of you will be invited to come with your section of the city so that we can really get to know what our citizens are feeling and thinking. And then we will have some analytics produced from that, some metrics that will go into strategies, objectives, and vision that we will use as we look forward to this strategic plan for our city. This strategic plan then will be a forefront for helping us with the upcoming general plan that's going to be put together. And so hopefully that the 2 of them, we've never done a strategic plan, and so this will be a very instrumental part of maybe looking at our city revenue sources, vision of what we want to do with regards to growth. We know we want to be a little bit more proactive on a few things. There are some legislative items that are coming down and look like that they might have a huge impact on cities, and of course we're fighting back, but once it's passed, and so we want to make sure that we're in the right place for this. It's a long-term project that we're working on. It will take quite a few months to go through this in preparation, but because that money is also earmarked for very specific purposes, I have asked Chris to also make that money a separate line item so that when I present you with updates along the way, I will be able to show you this is where we took that money out of, that it will not ever come out of general fund. Chris, is there anything I missed?
So I guess
All good.
I have a question,
Yes.
and it mostly applies to the UDOT money, but maybe the ARPA as well. So we get these grants, but do the grant monies have to follow the same policies and procedures as all of our other money? Like getting council approval for spending, that kind of thing?
Not the same, I mean, it is public money and it is our money, but it has to go for what the purpose of the grant was.
No, I get that, I get that it's earmarked, I totally understand, I'm just saying, the mayor.
Yes, we have to
can't
follow purchasing procedure, yes.
$1,000 without approval from the council. The council can only approve so many, we have to approve anything over a certain amount. Are those policies still being followed? Because you're saying that we've already got, like, work being done on a strategic plan, and I don't remember ever discussing that in council. So
We discussed it at one point a few weeks ago, but the mayor received the first contract and he was able to sign that.
I didn't do it illegally.
But Chris, I don't know, I've been going off of kind of what Chris has said, and it hasn't been told that we needed to put it on an agenda for anything. But we do have to give reports to the entities that have given us, and there's very, very strict guidelines on where that money can go and be spent. And so we are being accountable in a
I just
certain way,
remember
but.
the CARES money we had to approve in the council. So-
Yes, we did. We did do the CARES money, and that was
And
state
so I
money.
would think the ARPA money, we
wasn't
would
a
have to
grant.
do the same thing. And even the UDOT money, I would think that we would, again, I'm not saying that we would not
Right.
follow the earmarks, I understand.
I guess it would be similar to what the fire department gets, a lot of grants for fire department, and we don't come into that realm and say to the fire department, you got this grant, so we need to see and approve it. We've never done that with those kind of grant monies, so not that we can't, but I'm just saying, it hasn't been something that we have done. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
We will need to follow purchasing procedures for this, and even when the fire department does get their grants, they do follow purchasing procedures.
Yes.
When they file their fall report, their fall grant, where they get a lot of wildland equipment, it's a line by line specific grant that the state says, okay, we'll buy all these things, here's your money. So the state goes ahead and pre-approves it. The state has given us a lump sum of money, and so it's been earmarked for these things Carrie's talking about. Now we're getting to the point that we need to follow purchasing procedures where the mayor can do up to 10,000, up to 50,000. If or under 50,000, we don't have to go to bid unless it's for construction. Then we can go to 100,000 without bid. Otherwise, we need to look at the bidding process.
Yeah, and that's what I have gone forward with with those that we have entered into agreements with, is that if it's under 50,000, we don't have to do an RFP. And so far, everything's come in under that. So I don't know, do you feel that this is the kind of grant that we do need to have approval? Because that could set us back on things just in terms of how we're going forward, but I don't know. I'm open to whatever. Of course, legally, I'm making sure that all of our reports are in and on time, and they are very strict, like you said, with fire. Line item of what we're doing with our finances, and that's why I requested it be a line item on the budget, so that it's very clear when money gets taken out that that's what it's for. But I will defer to you on how to best be transparent in that, and yet also not tying the hands of those that maybe, the mayor has to sign all of the contracts or anything that we do.
Well, at a bare minimum, I think the council should be given a copy of the grant so that we're all aware of what the earmarks are. So that we know what it can and can't, my biggest concern, and I wanna be careful here because I'm not trying to criticize, but my biggest concern is it feels like we got this pot of money And without any council discussion, it's kind of starting to go down a track of being used for a specific purpose, which, that's fine if that's how narrow the earmarks are,
It is.
but I don't know that, and
We applied
because
for
I've never
this
seen the
last
grant.
year.
I've never seen the grant paperwork,
It's-
I've never seen any of it, so that would be helpful for me to know that that's actually what it's for.
Yeah, it's,
Before we get the
they-
train going too fast.
they're not doing, I guess, traditional paperwork, it's online. But I can request the copy or the link to it.
Yeah, just-
It's very, very specific on what we can use that money for, and as far as community development, we wrote that grant, with very specific parameters. They gave it to about 5 or 6 cities in the state, and so, with specific purposes in mind. And so that's the way we wrote it, so that we were able to get those funds. But yeah, our first report was just due, at the end of September, it's quarterly reports. At this time, we'd only spent, we only have one contract signed, we have the other contract coming, with scope of work, et cetera, and to showcase exactly where we're going on that timeline, but I can request the link to that, and see what we can do, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. So I don't know exactly how our ordinance even reads with respect to those types of expenditures, but I would assume that this, I mean, it sounds like it hadn't even occurred to me, I just kind of assumed that, you know, the grant kind of follows a very specific path, but I think that that's a really
I
valuable.
think some grants do, but as we found with like the recent funny money that the federal government's been giving us, that some of it follows a specific path and others don't.
Right.
Well,
And so,
Well, and even the entire grant
but just,
application process, I mean, maybe
very
we need to
difficult.
look at some, well, I'm just thinking, do we need to more centrally manage that at, you know, even its inception? I mean, that's,
Well, there is a lot of work to grant writing. We have written other grants in the past for other things. For the most part, we write a lot of grants for fire. I have never in my 2 terms ever seen one of the fire grants in paper form or even electronically, because Chris comes in or Craig comes in and says, we got this grant for this purpose, and we all say, yes, we're so excited because it does do its purpose, and we don't question about whether chipping is happening or whether the dumpsters are happening or whether the 3 firefighters, we just have accepted it. So if we're gonna change the policy for one grant, we have to change it for all the grants. And Parks and Recs, I know, are looking at grants, and they have done stuff. Greg Witt has written grants that we never saw as a council.
well, and
So those are just my experiences.
and I'm just wondering if we're obliged to, but it's not whether.
again, I'm not saying that the council has to approve it, but just in the spirit of transparency, at bare minimum, we ought to have it available on the website so that the public knows, here's what we've gotten, here's what we've received. I mean,
Mhm. I'm glad
again,
if we do it
just
for all
want, we
grants.
just
so.
wanna be as
Yeah.
transparent as we
Yeah.
can on everything we're doing.
So I
that's-
say that if we go that route, then I would request that every grant that we've ever had be put on the same thing, because I think that's an important aspect, not just this one particular grant. It is a lot, if the chief was still here, he would say it's a lot of hard work to write a grant, and very few people in our city do it because it's hard, and there's a lot of paperwork, it's competitive, and there's a lot of follow-up and paperwork involved in that. There is not, they do not give you any leeway to use the money in any way other than what it was designated for. And so I'm okay with doing it, I'm just saying that I would like maybe, so Park and Trails know that they will be putting all of their grant requests on there, the same with fire or
that'd be
EMTs or anyone.
Honestly, I think that would be good, because
I
that was
love it.
one thing the last campaign season for the city, you know, people were like, oh, we need more grants, and I think the citizens were unaware
They don't know.
We have
that we had just had a huge grant given to the city, you know, and again.
Well, they also said they wanted more transparency, so.
Right, well,
Right,
and I think
so
that's why I
I think
asked
it'd just
Chris,
be
is to maybe have an area of our budget that is for any of our grants, that we can put that under that heading, and anytime that we receive money, whether it's, you know, maybe even the fire money, every grant that we ever get should maybe be under one section that we could direct them to. And then we as council, as it's being spent, can notice that, you know, oh yes, it's coming here, not out of general funds. Because
So administratively, I mean, so obviously we all can manage any grants that we're applying for, but like, Rachel, do you apply for grants? I would assume you might, maybe.
She's just asking about them now. Where do I get this grant money?
Yeah, that's,
As soon as Jody teaches me how to write a grant, I'm gonna do that.
I'm just thinking that as far as keeping track of it, I mean, Chris, how many, do you have a sense, or maybe Doral, as to how many the fire department gets annually?
Fire typically gets 2 annually. One's a state grant. They said, here, you get money. What supplies do you need? So it is broken out line by line. You cannot deviate from that, or they do not pay you for that. The other one would be the AIM grant that was going through and paying for all the brush clearing and stuff. And that would probably be a good one, definitely, to bring to full council.
Okay, so.
And I've applied 3 times for the federal one, but never won.
Right,
But
we keep doing it.
And I feel like, speaking maybe out of turn for the fire department, I feel like we're very proud when we get a grant. And you have to, you get $10, you gotta say what you spent that $10 on. I mean, we show them receipts and
It's exactly the same.
It's very critical that that's followed, and we've done that. But I would like our citizens to know the success rate we've got in grants, because it's kept our department running in some.
Yeah, and we tell them, when we post about chipping, we say, this is happening because of a grant, the dumpsters are here because of a grant.
Yeah.
And I think that helps them to hear about it, but knowing and seeing it would be great, and that's why I've asked for, at least for the grant that I received here for the city, that it be made as a line item, so it is transparent to show this is where that money came from and this is how it's being spent. The same with those ARPA funds, which are even tighter with what you can spend them on, because they are federal dollars. You have until 2024 to spend those. But some cities in our state got millions and millions and millions of dollars. Our state got a lot of money, billions, and so that's why they want to match some of the smaller cities' water infrastructure projects.
So do we need a formal policy though, is I guess my question, do we need something that, a protocol that we observe with all grant monies to then get them incorporated into the budget and so forth?
My wish is that it would be more public. When we got COVID money and we bought all that medical equipment that really was cool due to their efforts, I mean, I wish the public knew about that. I think it's a positive thing. It shows effort on the city's part to.
Could you just make somewhere on the website where you add those type of
Grants.
Yeah, could just put them on the website, that'd be a good idea. I think though, the person whoever wrote the grant, because I don't think we should just have any old person write the reports or fill them out, because fire knows how to do theirs, right? The person who writes the grant knows what is in there and what needs to be reported and the deadlines and everything else. I think that we shouldn't really mess with that formula. If Parks and Trails goes and gets a bunch of grants, the Parks and Trails Committee should be responsible for not only writing the grant, but also the reporting mechanisms that are in place.
No, I'm just talking about like apprising the council of
Yeah,
each grant. I mean, that could be a pretty simple.
It would be good.
Yeah, I think you keep it simple.
I don't know why the council would not want to be aware of these grants and approve them. The whole city runs based upon the decisions that you make. And if there may be a grant out there that's available that the city has really no business in applying for. And I think the council jointly needs to make those kinds of decisions. And if somebody wants to request a grant, I think they should come before the council in a work session and just make a brief presentation of what that grant is about, how it would benefit the city, and for the council to give the go-ahead then for that person then to work on that particular grant, and keep the council informed if it's received and so forth.
I think it's a good suggestion.
Mayor, just to that point, you signed the contract, with the state for the grant that I applied for, the community development grant this summer. I never saw a copy of that, so I might want you to look in your records to find that copy. And then we recently did that contract with Mike Hansen from Rural as part of the planning part of it. So those are two things. I don't know if we need all of those contracts on, Chris, or just the initial grant, but just so that Jody can have records of what has been signed.
Yeah, no, usually when I sign anything, it then says it submits it to our city attorney or to Jody, so
Because
I'm
I
usually
didn't
not the
get
last
copies.
signature on it.
I didn't get copies of those.
I didn't get copies of the last UDOT one,
So we just.
so, but we can get in touch with,
Yeah. We wouldn't have got the money if you hadn't signed it.
Maybe I don't remember signing it now that I know that it might have been illegal, so.
Well, it was definitely not illegal. We were given that money.
Right.
But again, the whole reason that I requested this budget discussion was
Start
with
with
the,
that.
the whole reason I requested this budget discussion was just to say, I really feel like it needs to be transparent, and I would like to have those as line items on our budget for any grant, so that we will be able to not only as a council see where that money's coming from, but also for our citizens to know. So
And
that's why I requested it, and that's why what I told you initially.
Yeah, no, and I don't wanna lose sight of that, because I agree, that's valuable, but I also think that this is a broader,
Yeah, it is a broad
perspective
topic.
that we do need to address, and so, does anybody have thoughts as to, I mean, we could make it a standing agenda item, I mean, it could be as simple as that, or,
I think it just needs to be I don't know whether
An understanding.
policy or understanding is just when we have a grant, that we're thinking we're going to apply for, it should just be, one of our news items on the agenda, so that we communicate, hey, this is the grant, here's the amount, here's what it's for, and we're going to apply for it.
so just to jog our memories, Jody, can
And
we
then
just
if we
make it a
receive it-
standing item?
Do we
And
have,
maybe a non-issue
right,
9 times out of 10, but then about 10
But it's
times.
good bragging rights, and we're letting the citizens know that we're
Yeah.
doing these
We're
things,
getting
right?
there.
This extra work.
So one
Right.
thing I've been thinking about is that when we have grants that are so specific on what you spend it on,
they're all very.
and the citizens are seeing, I'm gonna pick on you, Janet. We're doing something in Parks and Rec, we're doing a trail or something like that, and we've got potholes on Woodland Hills Drive. They're going, why in the heck are they spending this money on a trail? You can say in that, this is what it's allotted for, and it's very specific to what it's going to, right? So I think that transparency would be helpful for me as a citizen, to say,
I agree.
this money isn't just any general money that can go to anything, it has to go to these specific.
Yeah, we're not taking money out of roads
Correct.
to do a trail.
Yeah.
No, I agree, I think it would be good, just for people, so people know.
Yeah,
Because that's the biggest complaint, right, is that people don't feel like they know what's going on, or where the money's being spent, or where it's coming from.
right, and I think as we put these as line items, then if somebody asks us a question like that, we can just specifically say, look at this line item, this was specifically for
Yeah.
parks. Do we currently have any park grants out? I know we've had them in the past, and I don't know if they've all been spent, or if
Like
there's still
the fence
anything.
was done with the grant.
Yep, the fence was done with the grant, there's been a couple of other things that, for parks and trails that were done with grants.
There's
Um,
nothing outstanding at this time.
Okay.
It was just an example.
Right, but, well, I'm just saying for Chris's viewpoint, if we're gonna put these
Yep.
under, and as this budget discussion was for, that he would be aware, oh, there still is some money here or here, that it would be helpful.
The one thing I'm going to mention, which I don't want it to be a major hiccup, it's just an issue, is the way we currently do the line items, those line items carry forward for like 3-4 years. So it's very difficult to add a line item, and it's very difficult to have a line item go away. Now, the reason that it's that way is the spirit of transparency. And some monies, some categories do carry over year to year to year. grants are kind of a little bit weird, because they're almost like an enterprise account where you're gonna fund it with a certain amount of money, and then as money comes out, you're gonna wait until it goes to zero, and then the enterprise account's gonna go away. So that's, it's just a little bit of a budgetary weirdness that you're gonna see.
Yeah, and that's what Chris and I talked about, that he would figure it out on exactly how it would look and where it would be put, but just so that it was transparent where it was.
Chris, where could I find the current policies and procedures, documentation?
So we've got some manuals and things like that in our city. Which title is it? Title 11, Jody?
Title 11 is subdivision development.
Yeah.
There's a Title 1 or Title, I can't remember exactly where it is, but there's some in there. Yeah, there needs to be some policies probably on this. First of all, hands off to Carrie. 300 grand, Carrie, that's not shabby. That's a nice job. So $305,000 is a good pat on the back. She at least deserves, maybe a hamburger. I think we may have overlooked the amount of money there with all the other stuff, but back to Dave's point, we do need to follow procedures, especially with federal monies. We got to watch out for Davis-Bacon wages. Contractors have got to sign some specific forms that say they'll abide, they're not going to union stack or not, be equal in their employment and all that kind of stuff. But there's specific forms they need to sign when they get to that point. I don't believe, Carrie, you've obligated much more than 10,000 at this point, if I'm reading things correctly, which is still well within the mayor's purview. But when we start getting into RFPs and RFQs and those kind of things, we're going to need to probably get those sooner than later if you're ready to start spending this money.
We don't anticipate any RFPs or RFQs. Everything is under that 50,000. We're not anticipating any one entity going over that. And we have already decided that it will be kind of in phases, this project, for another term, for lack of a better term, and different phases. And we've been doing some background work right now, and then we're going to go into our second phase, and then hopefully by the end we not only have a strategic plan in place, and this is all stemming from citizen input. We will also then be able to have some things in place if the council, if we do need to have recommendations to the planning commission for updating ordinances. For a strategic plan is more about vision and sustainability, but it also entails land use, potentially some land use options, and so the tie-in with the general plan, and there may be some of the monies that we could potentially use as part of that updating of the general plan. That would be in the last phase of implementation, because it will come, planning, research, planning, the strategy, objectives, vision, and then implementation will be the end, because my goal really is that we have a sustainable city in a lot of areas, that we all understand what the vision of our city is based on citizen input, as well as council input, as well as our staff input, and that if we do need to update ordinances for future land use so that we're in compliance with state statute, that this planning commission has those tools in place, and that this really will be something that can be long-term, a long-term benefit to our city.
Thank you, Gary. All right, any other comments?
Yeah, can I ask a question on all this?
Of course.
So, as you spend these grant monies, are they put on the council's consent agenda for approval? I mean, I'm almost hearing no, but I just thought I'd ask that straight out.
That's what I was saying, is so far we've never done that.
So they are not, okay, I just
We've
didn't.
never done that before. I mean, like Craig just told us all about all the fire grants, and we know where they're going, but we don't approve that
It's
he
never been on-
spends it on that
Never
way.
been on a consent agenda.
Well, now, that's not technically correct all the way, because there is a grant section for receivables for fire and a grant section under fire for expenses too. So they are listed there. And when those monies do come in, the council does vote on them. But
we don't vote on the specifics of before they're spent. We
correct.
spend them, we consent to them, as we consent to everything else with regards to, oh, checks were written for here, or this went here, that's how we're doing it.
But the council, I mean, it is, so it does go through the
It does
council.
go through the council.
Oh, that's what I was trying to
It's just
figure
not
out.
asked beforehand. It's not a before, it's a, okay, this happened, are you okay with it?
But, so the city, you can't say that, you know, there was, you know, $700,000 spent that the council never consented on.
No,
That was it.
Council votes on all the monies going in and out.
We vote on all money.
All right, thanks, Mark. Is
You
this
may
a
be-
secret or is this?
No, I can say it out loud. So he's looking for the policies in the ordinances, but you wouldn't typically find these kinds of policies in the ordinances.
Hence my question.
They would be either in the guidelines given to us by the state, which the state does give us financial guidelines, things that Chris learns in his training, Jody learns in her training. The other place that you would find them is in our city handbook manuals, things like that.
Like the policies and procedures.
What are we talking about, procurement or?
Yeah, we got procurement's in the title.
Yeah, procurement
Oh, that would be
policy.
in our city code, in our title.
Yeah,
That should be, or we follow, or we just say we follow the state guidelines.
So.
We don't have a robust policy manual in the city.
Throw that up a little bit, because there's a lot of things that we talk about that we do that are not part of our code. So I just wanna make sure that we're scrubbing it up so it's all there.
Yes, so what do you propose?
I'd be happy to.
Nothing necessarily right now.
So we need a discussion, right? We need a discussion, probably make some preliminaries, maybe some amendments or whatever to just say what we currently are doing, if it applies to current ordinance, and then make sure that they work together and make changes where needed. So nothing egregious. nothing
Right, no,
huge, but,
I'm just wondering if you're volunteering to lead that effort.
everybody.
You know,
Yeah,
I got the trail all groomed, so it's all clean now, so I can add this now to my
you need
docket.
something to do now.
I need something to do. Yeah, Chris, I'll reach out to you, and we can start going down this path if that works for you.
Yeah, this might be a good thing also to run, maybe through the finance committee, get some help through them, especially when it comes to the policies and procedures, and just see what other cities have.
Okay.
So that's you now, Janet, too.
Yay.
This is becoming a group effort.
Okay, I like it.
All right, yeah,
Okay.
I think it's a good call. All right, thank you. Item 5, completion of Loafer Drive. Corbett, Wayne, and no Ted, but between the two of you.
And I'll defer to Corbett.
Okay, perfect. That's the key, speak up.
You got it quick. We still don't have all the information from Ted, so I'd say we don't have any more information than we had last time.
All right, so what's?
Ted has been asked to bring those figures current as much as he can. So that should be in the works.
Can we pin him down to a date,
Like a
like,
deadline.
yeah, by like next council meeting?
We'll talk to him
if not
tomorrow.
sooner?
He'll be here, so
Okay,
we'll talk to him tomorrow about that.
okay.
Will that need to go back through approval because it doesn't, because it's so much over?
Well, and then there is additional discussion as to even the best approach in
Yeah.
that specific instance. So, yeah, there definitely needs to be more discussion. I think that it'd be best to start with the numbers, and then once we have the numbers, then we can see, is this feasible, even what we've sort of got penciled in, and if it's not, then start looking elsewhere at other
Okay.
options.
Perfect.
That's my take on it. All right, thank you. Okay, Ben, city
Yes.
accepting dirt at water tanks presentation.
Ooh, this will be fun.
Yeah. I'm all ears.
All ears? Yeah. Well, you can also be all eyes,
I mean, you have.
if this thing will work.
Right.
This might not want to work.
I
Locations.
bet Jody could get.
Jody, can you make this thing work?
I have lots of faith in Jody.
It's giving me errors.
have 7 updates, man. I got lots of issues.
Plus he's got an Apple and that's beyond.
Oh, my word.
You can send it to me, I can put it up.
You have to click this on, and you have to quit and reopen Zoom, so you're gonna go away, and you're gonna have to go back into the meeting. But
I'll just send it
that's
here.
what allows you to share your
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
I'm so glad.
Chris, can I send you,
Yeah, sure.
Chris, what's a good email I can send it to you? It's a Gmail presentation.
woodlandhills-ut.gov.
Some smart aleck over here is saying we could get a deer update while we're waiting.
Now that we have a,
Let's not.
we have an assigned member.
Hey, can you talk to us about the deer reproduction strategies?
No.
Are you handing out,
She'll need a table on Woodland Hills Day.
Guys are bad.
I've got 4 bucks sitting in my backyard almost every day, and they are huge.
Yeah, I've sent that, Chris.
Actually, David, I think you've got 5 bucks sitting in your backyard. I see, every time I walk up, I see 5 of them.
We got one running around with a sheet in his antler, so we want to fix that.
A sheet?
Oh, she's in
I don't
charge.
know.
And then there's the one that has the
There's 2 that have the Christmas lights.
Christmas lights.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Fix that.
Okay,
Stop.
I can see.
I'm Google illiterate. How do you get this to start? Or do you just want me to keep clicking on things?
typically top right, but that should be big enough. We should be good.
Okay.
So what I wanted to do was really kind of talk predominantly around this, not necessarily as just dirt to the tanks, but really what the holistic approach would be. Why, from beginning to end. So if you can jump to the next slide there. This is currently what is going on. New homes, owners are incurring larger costs for dirt transportation. There's also been preventable damage that's being done to our most expensive roads. There's extremely heavy vehicles are traversing our steep roads unnecessarily. Woodland Hills currently has very few residential streams. Woodland Hills currently is incurring increased costs pulling from other department needs. I don't think anything there is groundbreaking or earth-shattering. Next slide there, Chris. So kind of my proposed state, by taking on this project, these are some of the benefits that we may incur. So new homeowners would save substantial sums of money by not having to take their dirt as far as they currently are. Woodland Hills Drive would decrease the heavy load traffic, which would increase the life expectancy and decrease our maintenance costs. The safety of Woodland Hills Drive and Woodland Hills as a whole could potentially increase. Woodland Hills would be able to increase financial revenues to fund needed improvements throughout the city, and we'll talk more about those in a little bit. Woodland Hills would be able to offset potential loads of dirt coming into the city if the mitigation project is approved. Now, I've not hinged the whole presentation here on the mitigation project happening or not, so I've kind of done it as a twofold approach. Because I think the mitigation project argument is pretty, you're good, Chris, is pretty sound. If we're doing the mitigation project, it makes sense to take the dirt. So what happens if we don't? So here's the proposed contractor process, and I've broken it out into contractor process as well as what the city's process would be to make this thing come to fruition. So the contractor would need to submit a form. On that form would be, what is the soil test results? And we would need to know from Ted exactly what types of soil would be acceptable within the ranges, and their dirt would need to comply with that. They would then need to present an offer. Now this is a little interesting from we're not solidified on this. Corbin and I have been discussing on what this means, but potentially, if a contractor currently has to say spend $200,000 or even $100,000 to remove the dirt from the site, that would be the cost incurred to the resident. Then we would be able to say, hey, what city can we do $50,000 or whatever? They could present an offer and then we could discuss. Because it really comes down to, if we need the dirt and we can incur revenues from it, the number per load may vary, but we're not 100% exactly ironed out on that point from a financial standpoint. We would also like an estimated loads, which is a calculation that they should be able to do easily per kind of house square footage, depth of hole, those types of things. The dates of the transportation, so we can coordinate knocking the piles down after the dumping and all of those things. And then probably a 50% down on the estimate so that they can't, cut and run on us. Also, it gives us a little bit of security around that they're serious around this. And then a signature, probably some legalese on this documentation saying that they're complying with the other aspects of the contract, of the form. 2, then they'd be assigned locations and transportation. So they would receive our process document, which I'll go over in a little more detail in a little bit. Also a site map, exactly where their loads would be dropped. Pending on exactly the size of and the amount of dumping that they would be doing, we would probably get up there and spray because, it's always helpful whenever you're dealing with a dump truck driver to be as specific as possible where they would be dumping so that it is in a choreographed way instead of just randomly dumped. And then we'd also have truck placards. So that way no truck can go up and down that road without the placards in place, so that we would be able to tally and have a digital and video record of the total number of trucks. And then billing, total trucks, and then they pay out the remainder of their balance. Next, if you could, Chris. This would be then the city's proposed process. So for us to get underway, we would need to set this up. Start setting up the procedure, so that would take getting the contractor form, getting all of that, probably need to go to legal, get some legalese in there to make sure we're not missing anything. Probably a beta test as well with maybe one specific contractor we pick to iron out the process, kind of like we're proposing with the background checks. And then we would buy and test a trail cam that would then be able to snap pictures of the motion as it goes up and down the road there. We would also then need to install dust mitigation. So this would be a sprinkler system that would tap in there at the bottom of the hill and run up, and then is on a timer that would just wet the dirt on a routine basis. The cost there would be minimal, and we have agreements, and that basically pretty much worked out. And then prepping the dumping sites like I already spoke about. Then we'd do some marketing. We currently already do a contractor meeting, the city does, so we'd be able to let them know that this is an option, and that way they would know, and then they could budget that and figure out if this works for them or not. And then number 3, again, invoice and collecting the funds. Okay, next. So the process document elements. So this is the document and instructions that we would give drivers and contractors, but it would again lay out the location, the dust mitigation policy, the speed requirements, and then there'd be probably a pre-dump meeting depending on the number of loads that they are going to be dumping. So somebody would meet with them up at the site, allocating where exactly each load would be, things of that nature, and then also mapping out clear expectations.
So you're saying each contractor and or owner that would be dumping would be responsible for the dust mitigation policy, not the city?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So we would put it in place, right? And then
They would have to follow.
correct. And I've got, this will be the next phase here. But yes. So let me get this out. And sorry, Chris, I don't have one for you.
Fine.
This is an email that we received from David Taylor. Basically just so that he's fully aware of what's going on. Because, if we don't have his buy-in, it's going to be really a difficult process. Since he owns the easement there, or not, the easement is on his property. But as you can see here, and for the public record, it says we are okay with moving dirt, truckloads of dirt up our road as long as the following conditions are observed. A method of keeping the road moist to keep down the dust is implemented. The max speed limit of trucks is 10 miles an hour. Trucks are liable for damage for our landscaping / property if incurred.
He just finished all his landscaping, and it looks really nice.
It does. If you haven't gone, you should go take a look.
It's really good.
No jake brakes, dirt movement during daylight hours only, and then nothing stupid is repeated more than once. So I'm grateful that he's given us a little bit of wiggle room there.
You get one.
You get one strike. I hope that's per contractor, we'll figure it out now.
Now, we have been, I mean, right now, it's just basically the dirt road. Are we considering, or is he considering, I know at one point, he was considering maybe paving that road or putting gravel,
Post,
well, putting gravel down. Would putting gravel down beforehand help mitigate that dust?
so I've driven up that road, you know, a couple times over the last couple days as I've gone up to, you know, run the skid steer up there. And there are a few patches where there is gravel on it and it turns more into a rock slide. It just spins out. So I think dirt gives you better traction, and we might not have as many or any stuck. Would you agree with that, Corbett?
Okay.
You know, we had a fun offloading of the skid steer because of said rocks. So, okay, next one. Okay, so this is kind of where, so this is the vantage point of where we were the other day for our field trip. Probably nothing too new there. Okay, next one there, Chris. Oh, sorry, it's duplicate. So options. So obviously we know what happens if the mitigation is funded. Everything is great. We actually help save our roads because now we're not trucking dirt in that we will need, that the federal government will do. And we won't be able to generate anything beyond incurring more damage to our streets. But here's the real question, right, is if the mitigation project does not come to fruition, what does this thing look like? So this next picture is what it looks like right now. So you can jump, there you go, Chris. So that's our current state. Thankfully the leaves are beautiful so it doesn't look too bad. You can see it's a little more smoothed out. So this is my proposed doctored image, this next one, if you want to switch that, Chris, of what it potentially could look like after we're done. Please don't, you know, harass me too much for my pathetic photoshopping skills.
You say, is that Photoshop?
Yeah. But in essence, that is me putting, you know, a ground cover across that top, increasing the load of dirt exponentially off to the left. There's my itty bitty little bench that I put in there, mostly for Janet. But there would be a reseeding effort. I also threw a bunch of trees up in front of those water towers. Now, in talking with Corbett, one thing that we do need, whether we like it or not, for compliance with our water tanks is we have to have an equivalent basin for the displacement of a tank right there next to it, which we currently do not have. So we have to put a basin there no matter what we decide today. And there will be some significant dirt moving for that operation. More dirt would help us in facilitating that basin construction. So currently, Corbett, you've got a little bit of a divot there. How big is that current basin? Do you have any idea? The little, you know where your vent goes to?
It might be a third of an acre.
And it needs to be a full acre?
3
acres?
3 acre feet. Acre feet.
And so we do have some work needed to do, and that is not incorporated in this doctored image. And it would then probably run right across, you know, in between that road and the tanks, and it would go, you know, hang to your left there. But currently, really what my goal was, is right now, Chris, if you can go back one, currently this is what we're dealing with. And the future state is really what we potentially could get towards through an intentional effort to design this correctly.
So can you just walk me through,
Please.
because I'm having a hard time when you toggle back between the two. So you've got that sort of pavilion up there
the
that
plateau.
exists. So where's everything going then?
So the dirt would head to the left, so yes. So that is predominantly where I would foresee a lot of the dirt heading, which would extend that kind of flatter area to the left, and then it would also help us create a little bit more of a gradual slope there that we could reseed eventually. Now, we have to be careful here because it's a little bit of a two-edged sword. We cannot reseed that now in a way that would make sense, because for the mitigation effort, for them to get the compaction correct and everything, and what we would need to do anyway for the basin we do have to, for compliance sake, put there now. The grub, the foliage requires burying, and so having no foliage there right now is actually helping the process. And so we would really want to only foliage this area after we hear if the mitigation effort is taking place or not. Right now we've got dirt there.
The reseeding, if we do mitigation, reseeding is part of that, and
Perfect.
we would not have to. do
Wonderful.
anything for it.
Also, that road you see that cuts up and across and runs across the front and then kicks back up towards the water tanks, that would no longer be in existence because there's a gate on the other sides of those two white steel tanks up on the back there of the water compound. So the road would just come up into there. So all of that road, we could then turn it back into more of a nice gradual slope. And another element of this is we've currently, like I've spoken with you a few times, Mayor, we've spoken with the mayor of Mapleton, and the mayor individually, or his company owns 2 water tanks, steel water tanks that are down over by Ace Rents. And he has offered to give us those tanks. Now, we're figuring out logistics right now, so I don't want us to commit to anything too prematurely there.
Right.
But this would help us be able to get them up there and design it in a way that we could also make sure that the overflow basin is appropriately sized for
Increased water storage.
for the increased water storage. And those tanks, those 2 tanks are 500,000 gallon tanks each. So that would increase our water storage by 1 million gallons, which is what we need to do. That's something that's stomping down our door.
Culinary use and fire suppression.
And just commercial,
That's what I
or
meant.
culinary, yeah. So that's kind of my thoughts there. Chris, if you want to jump 2 down for me to give us some numbers.
So does that mean the retention basin would now be 6 acres, 1 foot deep, or 1 acre, 6 feet deep? If we put those other 2 tanks up there?
Great question.
Yes.
Yes. Corbett says yes.
That's why, again, if we end up doing the other, if we do the other mitigation project, that would suffice the requirement for the water storage tank as well as any debris flow.
It'll serve a dual function, which would be nice. So here's kind of some basic financial estimates. I didn't want to go too conservative, but I also wanted to not be optimistic for the sake of disappointment. So currently the average uphill home is pulling out around 600 loads. That 600 loads is about 10 yards per truck, which is around 4,615 cubic yards. And Corbett went into all sorts of really specific things about compaction when you dig it up and the fluffiness in the truck. And so if you want to know that detail, you can talk to him. But 6,000, if we say charge $50 per load. Now to give you an idea, when I built my home, my garbage trucks, or not my garbage trucks, I need to shift gears here. My dump trucks were around $90 an hour for the driver. And so $50 per load is quite conservative, and I think we could actually go higher than that and still save our residents a substantial sum. But that would be basically $30,000 for 600 loads per home. Last year, 2022, we had 18 homes, 40% of which were owner-builder. So we basically said, okay, conservatively, that's about 7 homes. So that could potentially net us around $210,000. Now, that's us just thinking the residents would take that, because contractors typically will sell that dirt or bill somebody else. So they'll bill their builder or their resident, that's their owner, and then they'll bill whoever's getting the dirt, and so they're getting from both hands. But that's not always necessarily true. I know we currently have a build in the city who's really wanting to be able to utilize this, and they have substantially more than 600 loads. And they are a commercial builder as well, so they're not necessarily an owner builder.
But owner builders, that's where you really see this as
Potentially, yes, because they don't have the relationships to be able to charge here and charge here. they don't have those agreements. They're usually just hitting Facebook saying, any places to dump dirt, who wants it?
Yeah.
And that's who we're really trying to help leverage. Okay, next slide. So here's the potential projects that this could fund. And these are kind of the projects that I see coming down our pipeline that we have expenses that are either going to kick us in the butt soon or are currently kicking us in the butt. So needed water tanks, I've already discussed that. We would actually build the foundation of for those tanks to sit on that would actually house a new tank when those tanks need to be replaced, because steel tanks have about a 50 to 60 year lifespan in them. So it would be a new concrete tank that we basically pour the foundation for now, put the new tanks in it, and then when they need to go, we could then build the new tank right on that foundation. So we're optimizing our funds that way. Road repairs, so we'd be able to repave a number of roads with these. We've got the cameras that still have added funds that need to be paid out this year. Legal expenses, the Salem well update costs, the storm raid retention. So pending on what happens with the current situation down the street, we may need to start that retention system sooner than later. And then also we've talked ad nauseum about what the sewer potential looks like going into the future. So those are kind of a few of the different options that this could potentially help us from a financial assistance with. Obviously, I'm very pro this project, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and your questions.
I have one. So when do we reach capacity? I mean, how many years of shelf life does this have?
Great question. So capacity is an interesting one because it depends, and one thing that Corbett reminded me of is the storm drain retention. So we've got some retention needs throughout the city that could leverage this same program. So not necessarily only at the water tanks is where we might need dirt going forward. So right now, Corbett, how many loads could we take?
Well, the mitigation, the design for the mitigation needs 52,000 yards.
So
that's
how many loads?
That's 5,000, 5,200 truckloads.
So that's 50, yeah, what he said. That's 5,000, so 5,200 truckloads. So at 600 per house, 600 times 7 divided by that, it's at least 2, 3, 4 years.
Okay.
And then we can find needs, not just for revenue, but where we need dirt. Because I don't think this project honestly makes sense as purely just we're the dump, only if we can use the dirt.
Now, I know you spent some time moving dirt around up there this past week, and thanks for doing that.
It was fun.
So, I mean, I assume that would be part of an ongoing effort, like with each load.
Yep.
I mean, we're
I'd be
basically,
more than
I hate
happy.
to say it, we're operating kind of like a landfill. I mean, it's something where we're pushing stuff around constantly.
Correct.
So who's
So-
doing that?
I would be more than happy to tackle that responsibility because I don't have anything to do.
Right.
But because
you
it's,
already volunteered for the
I
budget
just
policy
give it all to
job,
me.
so.
I want to make sure David's not stressed. No, I'm just kidding. Really, what it comes down, it's like 20 to 15 minutes, 30 minutes tops.
Okay.
If I pop up there in the morning, it's not going to throw my day off at all. It might actually just get me out of bed sooner, which we could all benefit from, or at least I could.
And there would just be a new council assignment going forward?
Well, in that case, we'll have to readjust that. But if it's only a 20-minute, 30-minute project,
Yeah.
and that's the nice thing is we can shut this thing off at the drop of a hat. We can just say no more if it ends up being too egregious, and we can't,
I don't think you could ask for a better neighbor
Yeah,
project,
exactly.
right? Like his terms are.
Can I ask a question?
But
Yeah.
Okay, so as you're looking at this, is there a demarcation point in the city where it makes more sense to haul it north out of town than it does to haul it to the tank? And if that is the case, where is that point, given most of our new construction is going to be on the north end of town?
great question. From my understanding, I think that's really the main issue is most of our construction's on the other side of town. I think if you're probably city building and down, it probably makes more sense to go out of the city.
It's economics for the contractor.
Yeah.
Most of the
So-
contractors are taking it to Mapleton though, so even if they're driving from across the way from our city, it's still cheaper.
But I guess, Mark, your question really is damage to the road, right?
Well,
Or-
well, both. I mean, we're talking, from our perspective, damage to the road. The contractor's not gonna really
They
be
don't
too
care.
concerned, but they're gonna be what's most economical for them. And that's all I would be concerned is if we do all this, and I just wanna make sure this question is brought up, is,
Uh-huh.
you know, are we under a pretense that everybody's going to do it, or everybody's going to use it, or do we know what percentage of building or builders are going to use that versus what probably won't, knowing that that's probably a little bit of wiggle room in that question.
Well, if you go to the process, so Chris, if you could jump back up to my contractor workflow. So slide 4. So right there, up 4, sorry. 1 up. So in that first one, they're gonna have to submit that contractor form, which is basically a petition or a request to dump, which we could deny, right? So we can look at it and say, from a case-by-case basis, this doesn't make sense.
And I'm not worried about us denying the request, I'm
Uh-huh.
worried about them actually wanting to do it. So we go through all the trouble to set this up, and it doesn't pencil for the developers because they're so far north that it makes more sense to go that way than this way. That's my.
It's not mandated,
No.
right? So they don't have to do this. This is an option for them, which currently, most homeowners that I have spoken to, and then my own personal experience, you're looking at $90 an hour. So right now we have some contractors, what did they say, run into Springfield, Payson.
Wells to Springville, 2 hours round trip.
Yeah, they're 2 hours round trip, right?
Or 1 hour and 45 minutes to get to the high school.
Yeah, so they're not, right now we're in a really great time. We could really start cranking. Another thing that's important to know is contractors aren't, from my experience, and Corbett, correct me if I'm speaking fake news here, Summit Creek constructors are going up through the gate and down through Woodland Hills Drive.
Yeah, and Oak.
But yes, but they are not going down
By Four
through the
Seasons.
gate and Four Seasons because of the gate.
Yeah.
It's too hard for them to slow down and stop and all of that. Is that a true statement?
Well, I understand, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, some are dumping it on private property up in town.
Yes, that's always going to be available, but
Anyway, I just wanted to bring that as a question that probably needs to be into the equation.
no, I appreciate it. Thank
So
you.
one more, this is obviously the way to the switchback, so I know that when we did the mitigation project, the park was closed, the switchbacks were closed, I mean, how are you gonna manage the safety of the trucks going up and down with hikers at all times of the day?
So one of the things, per David's requirements would be a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit hold, right? So at 10 mile an hour up or down, we should be able to hopefully bank on, and I don't hope it's a bad thing to bank on, but, people being able to hear a dump truck coming or not.
It's just a tiny little piece of road that they're gonna intersect, because then the hikers are gonna go to the right, the truck's
Yeah.
gonna go to the left.
Yeah,
It's the entire utility road, I mean,
if they're
Unless
coming
you're-
from
you're
Broad
not crossing
Hollow,
private property, are you, Janet? The designated hike is all over
I
the
may have
utility road.
permission.
Oh, okay,
so up the utility road
yeah,
would be the only intersect point.
Yeah.
So
that's a pretty good stretch, though, I mean, that's
It is.
probably,
it's
10
probably a
from a
quarter
mile.
mile, yeah, probably quarter.
yeah, it might be.
How do you intend on enforcing any of this?
So that would be part of what the trail cam system is. With us being able to looking at your placards, right? Because we'll have license plates on there.
Who has the time to sit and watch that video?
Well, it's a trail cam, which helps, right? So it doesn't sit there and record
I
constantly, right?
get that, but still, who has the time to sit and watch that video?
Well, for $200,000,
Somebody
we
will.
can make sure that gets done.
So would it
Ben,
trigger
it's
with,
Ben.
It's been.
all motion, or, I mean, can you limit those so that
You
it
can do
would?
photos with.
Well, there might be people from Parks and Trails Committee who would be willing to take turns doing it, because it is.
There are
making
options,
trails.
but
There's options.
Really, it comes down to if somebody comes to us and said, yeah, I moved 50 loads, right? If I'm the one knocking the piles down, and there's 300 loads, I'll then go to the camera. But I'm not gonna go and say, oh, sorry, it was 52. You know,
Well, I mean, there's that aspect, but I'm also thinking about the whole 10-mile-an-hour thing. I mean, again, you know, unless you got a speed cam there too. I mean, this sounds like a really great idea on paper, but I just see logistics.
I don't see anyone going 80 miles at will.
Not on that road.
only Janet would be the one, and that's a TLG.
On that dirt road.
And I'll be able to hit that with the camera all day long. No, I think really, what it'll come down is if David calls us and says, hey, I got somebody flying, right?
I feel like Sherry would be all over that too.
We will get
I agree, but
information.
that's actually my concern, is I don't wanna make those residents up there mad.
That's my number one thing, and that's why I'm glad we have this. You know, and she was there for the field trip, she's listened to this, she's not here tonight, I think she's out of town.
She's in Cabo or something.
But, I mean, we could definitely go and ask the neighbors. how they
So
feel
this is
about it.
also part of that contractor forum, right? The contractor is holding the liability. They're gonna be the ones saying, my drivers are going to do X, Y, and Z.
Well, okay, and I respect what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been around contractors, and more importantly, their subs long enough to know that contractors have very little control over their subs.
Oh,
That's just the
I
reality.
get it. There's one nice thing that's in our benefit. Dump truck drivers, if you say drive 10 mile an hour, they're on the clock. They typically will milk that clock as best they can. They're not going to try and hustle for that sake.
And if they're reckless, they're gonna be reckless.
It's if they're
going
paid by
that
load,
way
you know,
or
then-
down the mountain too. I mean, that's the other thing to consider, is it's not like we're guaranteeing their safety by pointing them in the other direction.
We're not gonna be able to mitigate every single
To
risk.
me,
right
to
now.
me, this isn't, and I know that this sounds crazy, but it's not necessarily a safety issue. I realize that we've had a few cases, but honestly, there was some bad equipment that was being used. But for me, the bigger issue that I'm, most concerned about is the roads and the breaking up of the roads. So the whole, you go down thing is very important to me. I don't want Four Seasons people driving up to Woodland Hills water tanks, because that would impact our roads. I mean, I look at that road, Deep Forest, and it has had the crap beat out of it. It's a really bad road, where before we did the mitigation, it was a pretty good road. So you can't tell me that all those dump trucks didn't impact that area. They did.
Oh, and I'm not going to,
Nice, isn't it?
right? And
Yeah.
that's
So
partially
we
why
almost
the budget
need,
is
we
high.
almost need
What
to
is
make
that
enough
road?
money off of
You'll
this
have to tell me.
that we can replace that
Too
road.
many bucks for bucks.
100%.
Ben, I got a question.
Please.
Ben, Finley here. What
Yeah,
is
the other
your,
Ben.
Wake up.
what is your perspective, Ben, of people in Summit Creek looking for a place to put their dirt? Has that come up much in the
In our
conversations you've
pre-con
had?
meetings, they'll ask, right, and, I don't know what to tell them, I say, I don't know, this is kind of the first I'm hearing about this, obviously, and so I didn't know this was an option, but otherwise, they, like you said, contractors typically have contacts and resources, they reach out to different people and find places to take the dirt, but, it does come up, I just don't have an answer for them, they just have to use their traditional resources to find somewhere to take it.
I'm just wondering if
Yeah,
you
that's a
had
good
any
question.
exposure to that.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, Dora.
This is a new thing that really concerns me. I would go up there during rainstorms and during heavy snow melt, and when water really flows out of that canyon, I personally saw mudslides coming off the side of that mountain, and it it dissipated, it wasn't a crisis, but boy, under the right conditions, I was worried, what would the city do as far as liability if that really did get moving? That's what this whole area is a Bolivian fan, where just that dirt you're putting there used to be down here anyway. So, well, it used to be there,
It's
but
called restoration.
so, yeah, so I just want to throw out there that I wonder if we could get ourselves into mischief for dirt we put there coming back in a hurried way. And I don't think it's impossible, it might be unlikely, but I don't think it's impossible for that to occur. And, you know, all of our finances are blown in one of those incidents, and I just wondered if, just keep that in our minds, that dirt can move when it's muddy, and I saw it move, and it slid all the way down the trail that was going over to the switchbacks. And you just watched it move. It wasn't a thing you could stop either. So be aware, that's my concern, and my biggest concern about the whole project of putting loose soils up there that are gonna flow away under the right conditions and cause havoc if they got away from us. So I just wonder what the thoughts are on that.
Well, one thing I like, Chris, as far as, I mean, would this be something that our insurer would absorb in terms of potential liability? I mean, I know you might not be able to speak to that specifically, but I'm kind of wondering, I mean, is this the sort of thing that we would have to put them on notice of and make sure that they don't have Doral's very concerns and say, well, you can do it, but don't count on us if it becomes a disaster?
I can ask, you know, there's lots of weird things that cities do, so I'm sure this isn't new. They insure landfills.
Yeah, I think that we want to make sure that we got just the same coverage that we have with respect to other aspects of our operations.
And there's some things with just Mother Nature too that are different for liability, you know, if it's in place, and so we don't want to increase any hazard, but at the same time, we also can't mitigate for everything.
But I've liked your report. This is concise. I mean, it made me think in a different way, being totally negative about this to begin with, to be honest with you. But just because I've seen it as an eyesore. But
Well, and as you can see, my goal, and you know, even Corbett's goal is to make it look far better, you know, than it currently is. Really, for me, one of the biggest takeaways is we have to do something. The status quo cannot be our answer. Something has to change, because right now, it's not beautiful. And we do have to make that basin for water flows to be in compliance with our water system. So something has to change, and for me, you know, and I hate to harp on this, because I know, you know, it's my favorite catchphrase nowadays, but, you know, any way we can generate revenue, I think is something we really have to strongly look at. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Great presentation. Thanks, Corbett, for your participation in that too. All right. Wait, no,
Seven.
Wow, okay.
No.
Let's back it up.
Proposed
Yeah.
amendments to the 2023 fiscal year budget.
Okay, so
Mine
if we
says
already
7.
discussed that? Yeah,
The
so,
one that you printed out for us is 7.
Okay,
yeah, no,
The one on my computer is 8.
all right.
well, and then that was also covered under item
Mayor
4,
does.
right? I mean, so
Yeah.
we
I don't
addressed
know
the
if
budget.
that's the same, Chris, is it on there twice for a reason?
Which one?
Budget discussion that I talked about, but on there's a proposed amendments.
Oh, we haven't even got to the real budget yet. Sorry, guys.
That's what I was wondering, this is
Okay.
something different.
All right, well, then let's get into it.
Well, this is the public hearing portion of, this is why we had the public hearing tonight.
Yeah.
So do you want to take a potty break, Mayor, or do you want to just go push through it?
Well, how much time are you
Could
thinking?
you turn up his volume a little bit? He's really-
Probably, well, depending on how many questions, really, I can go through the changes. And in addition to the changes that were presented to you already, there's been 2 or 3 more changes that I need to point out tonight, especially dealing with fire and dealing with Loafer, West Loafer.
Chris, could you talk a little louder for us?
Yeah.
All right, well, what's everyone's stamina? We can forge ahead.
I can keep talking while you guys stretch and stuff, and
Is there a way for you to give them copies of what you're looking at so they can also see it
oh yeah.
really small on the screen?
It's fine for Janet and I, we're in good shape.
Oh, that's good. I'm kind of like this.
Have you seen the print on my phone?
Oh, yeah, no, please, if you want to take a break, we can do that too. Okay,
We're taking a break?
no, just carry.
Okay.
Is that okay now? Can you see this? It'll take me a second to generate the report, Jody.
Okay.
So really, you can go down your report, you can kind of follow along off your report based on the screen there. We're really gonna be dealing with these 2 columns, the last 2 columns. The first column here is the budget that was presented by the mayor and was voted on by the council. The second one is this first budget revision for this current year that we're in. And so I'm not even gonna go over the revenues because they're staying the same at 1.2 million. The licenses and permits are staying at 1.1 million, so I'm not gonna touch those. A little bit of change right here in the governmental, in the grants. And I'm gonna have to look at my paper here. Run revenue.
See, we don't even know what grants we have.
It's probably the fire, well, it's just the fire department.
So it's the AIM grant with the fire department. We're separating that one out right here.
Okay.
That's dealing with mainly the brush clearing beginning of the year. Let's see, and then we'll jump down here, here's some meat in this next section, and this is gonna deal with this $203,000 that Craig talked about earlier today of revenues to be received for the fire that the guys have gone out on. Plus a little bit for some additional fire department services that we might be able to bill out, we don't know quite yet. And those are pretty much the 2 heavy hitters. So I don't know if we need to go over the 203,000 more than what Craig already talked about.
No, we're good there.
Okay,
Is that just the 98,000 plus?
Well, it was the 203 and then they took out the wages, right? 'Cause
Yeah,
they're
so the
paying wages.
203.91 is the
Because they
revenue.
get paid to be on the fire and they get paid to do the mitigation.
So that's just Craig's spreadsheet.
yeah, and this is just the revenue. We'll hit the expenses in just a second. Interest, not gonna, anything change there, nothing changed there, miscellaneous revenue. This next one, sorry, did change. And because I've made this bigger, it's really being slow. So let's look on our papers on the on the first page towards the bottom. And we're looking at the
I printed it.
fund balance. So that's what's changed here is we are taking away any money that we need to take from savings. We're getting rid of that this year. And I'll explain a little more here in just a second, but just know with the way the budget is now, we're not pulling anything out of savings.
Yay, yay.
Well, yay, yes, but it's artificial. So
But later.
Dang
yeah,
it.
wait for it. So, okay, nothing changed there, nothing changed, a little bit changed in the office stuff, probably not enough to even worry about with $2,000. Nothing changed here. So really the first part of the expenses, nothing's changing too greatly. I gotta make this small just for 1 second. There we go. Okay. A little bit under the ordinance officer. There's just something that the computer I had set up incorrectly with calculating 401k. So it's basically taking 401k monies from roads that we had budgeted, and I've moved that up to cover some of the officer, ordinance officer. So it really is not a change because it came off of the roads budget anyway. So that's a net nothing. Nothing changed there. Okay, let's talk about this section, 108,000.
What's that retirement line that's, you know, the 585% increase? Or-
That's the one that wasn't calculated right,
Okay.
but it's been fixed now. Oh my heavens, I am so sorry, guys. This is just,
Just go smaller if you need to.
yeah, let's see here. Okay, a new section is this fire and fuel reduction. So these are going to be the expenses that Craig talked about earlier. Salaries projected at 70, wage, FICA about 6,000. 32,000 was the expenses that he had there for the new pump, some of the travel and lodging that the guys had to do. And then put a couple little miscellaneous things like for training and then some discretionary funds.
Then once in a while they get a hotel room.
Yeah, so his numbers are gonna be a little different than mine. I'm throwing more money in there just in case something happens. If his numbers stay true, then we won't need all these monies in the budget.
Chris, I have a question. Craig was telling me that he just got back from Florida.
Yes,
Which fund did that come out of?
so myself, Craig and John Wallace and Mark Hales went to Florida. That's all part of the contract. So that does not come from city funds. There's no line item for that. When the council voted on the
contract for purchasing the equipment?
yeah, there was a 2 visits, a pre-visit and a post-visit. So the pre-visit, we spent 2 days going over, and I'm not joking, every bolt that was on that truck. And so there were changes made, back and forth additions and changes, some new safety things that had to be put on the truck. But anyways, that was what was done in Florida, and Mark Hales is the rep with Pierce. And so we got back last week.
That directly, it's not a reimbursement thing.
No, this all was direct through Pierce. So you won't see anything on the budget for that. Okay, so I'm gonna go down to the streets. And there was, as we talked about, there was a little bit of reduction in the streets, and this is mainly gonna deal with, oh my goodness, with the 401k, so the retirement, so 5,000, just about 5,000 went down to retirement, but part of that went up to roads, and I believe the other part went to
Or enforcement.
Yeah.
it went to enforcement, and 3,200 cover zoning and 1,000 to parks. Okay, so that's where the money went. 3,250 to the ordinance officer and 1,000 to parks. So it's really not a net anything, but I mean, nets out to zero. We'll go down roads. Looks like nothing else was changed on roads. It's pretty much the same budget there, except for the 401k or the retirement.
Equipment.
Yeah, 134 on tools and equipment percent.
Oh, yes, thank you, Brian. I owe you a burger. Right there. The lease for the tractor that we use a tractor down at the salt shed for loading the salt. We use the tractor for water, we use the tractor for roads. That payment was not taken into consideration earlier. It's a $3,000 payment. It comes off this line. Didn't want Corbett's total tool budget to go towards one thing, so I'm proposing that we add that 3,000 back in, so he has that money.
If it was a shovel, huh?
Proposing nothing changed with the snow plowing. There's a little teeny bit, but I think it goes with payment. And then parks, we talked about parks.
Snow plowing? Or is that salt that's the,
It's like,
because we purchase all of our salt now?
Capital outlay.
Yep.
yeah. And then there's that $1,000 and we talked about coming from the roads for the 401k there. All right, and then our savings accounts, we're still planning on putting 50,000 away for the fire, 4,000 for EMS, 5,000 for snow plowing, 5,000 for future roads, 1,000 for parks. And we're gonna transfer $94,089 from our general ledger or general account to the enterprise or water fund to cover the ARPA monies that Carrie talked about earlier. So this money was deposited almost 2 years ago, just kind of in
Last summer,
I'm sorry.
2021, the first tranche was 2021, and
Yeah.
then, and
So it's been
then.
sitting in our savings account.
This year.
We're gonna pull it from our savings account and put it into water. So this is just a mechanism how to get it out of there. The other thing is now we're not taking money out of savings, but we're actually gonna put $26,623 back into savings. And the reason I'm saying that's artificial is because of what Craig presented tonight. The revenues the excess revenues he's done and received for these fires are gonna go to fund fuel reduction for next year. So technically this $94,000 overage that he has is going to be sitting in savings. At the end of the year, when all gyrations are done and we get the budget finalized and the final numbers, this will stand out more clearly to us. Any thoughts or questions?
I just had one question, I guess. You know, why do we have retirement in snow plowing and parks? Where does that come from?
So if Craig or Corbett puts hours in parks or they snowplow, then we have to pay retirement on those salaries, and it just comes from those departments.
Does anyone work that many hours of snow plowing to get retirement?
Craig and Corbett.
Craig and Corbett.
Oh,
It's a
yeah,
slice of theirs.
yeah,
But
of
we
their
actually-
overall.
We actually talked about that in our finance committee meeting.
It seems painful, but worthless.
Yeah.
Just,
The
if there's
hard
a-
part is we've got Craig and we've got Corbett.
I get a slice of all sorts of,
And we try to slice them up, and the goal was, I think originally, it was way before my time, was to try and make it very clear exactly which fund their money was coming out of for the hours that they spend. But that also then means that, and I'm gonna use some exaggerated examples to prove the point. Chris has to look at, and so let's say we have a terrible snow year, and they are spending weeks and weeks and weeks driving trucks, the two of them. Well, now, because they didn't say do roads that month, he has to transfer their roads 401k, their roads wages, their roads whatever, into snow plowing because we had so much snow plowing that had to be done. And it just kind of is, I mean, it's a shell game.
seems like
to
a lot of
try and-
extra work.
Yeah. it
Well,
just-
not only that, they have to account for your time, right, where you worked, and so it's a budgeting.
So I almost think, and again, this is not something I'm trying to push tonight, it's an idea, float it, think about it. I almost think it makes more sense to just have under admin and say, Craig,
X.
Corbett, and then let them manage the way they need to manage their time.
And make it so much more,
Well,
And Jody,
I think the problem is we have to pay some of their salaries out of the water fund.
But isn't,
And some
and Chris
out of
does, don't
And
Chris
that's the
come out
money.
of several places too?
Yeah, Chris's does too. And I'm just saying, I think that in an effort to be transparent, we've actually made it very non-transparent.
very hard.
And
because it's
so,
$1,000 here and a few thousand here and then wages over here. and
but
It's not consistent.
we do have the problem with the water fund, because that can't just come out of one spot. That has to, and then we might have that same problem with a few other areas, like if we ever have to pay their money out of like a grant or something like that, so.
That's the challenge right there. We have to file reports with the state and we have to allocate anyways. So like just this year, Corbett suggested that we make a building inspection section all itself, because we've got to account for their salaries, their wages, the paper, pens, pencils, all that kind of stuff, so we can justify our costs for building permits.
Oh, yeah.
It's a double-edged sword, like Dave's saying. It's a pain in the neck. It would be great to just have it up in one spot, but I think in the long run, with the stuff we got to do in the back end, maybe that you guys don't see, it's been beneficial to have it broken up like this.
Well, I think a previous council urged you to do this way too.
It's gone back and forth since I've been doing this
Yeah.
a couple different times, so. But I agree, Dave, it would be so much simpler just to plop it all.
It just makes it harder to track or to really pin down and say, I know what this is, because it's spread out and you don't know who's coming out of which, roads, water, whatever.
And then you try and reconcile it with the state website, and the numbers don't match at all.
And the state puts a disclaimer, if you guys read on there, that they will not match, or that there's a good chance that they won't match. And so we went through that a couple of years ago with residents trying to match up, and we got the state involved, and they said, read our disclaimer. And so it's hard.
All right, well, I mean, I'm certainly open to looking at it, if it improves the overall process, including transparency,
Right.
I don't wanna be sort of schizophrenic and
Yeah,
back
no,
and forth,
I
back and forth all the time.
You gotta go one way or the other.
I mean, it does make
Yeah.
sense to have it on the books to say, okay, this much comes out of here and here. But when we're showing it to residents, when they say, how much do our city employees make, there's no one location that says, this is the salary, this is the retirement, this is the whatever, right? It's all piecemeal, which makes it really confusing to them
It's meat,
when we try
piecemeal,
to.
and shared between multiple people.
Yes, exactly. And it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense to them. It doesn't make sense to our residents, and so I think that there's somehow to be able to, I mean, when they look on a state website for a state employee, it's all in the same spot, but in ours, it's not.
So Chris, what is the primary advantage to our current way of doing it?
So the salaries are on one spot. If you go to the transparency website and look it up by employee, just like the state employees are show up there also.
Okay.
What's your question there?
I'm just curious, so the key advantage to our current procedure is what?
Transparency. It all went back to transparency. We want to know how much it costs to snowplow. We want to know how much parks cost. We want to know how much roads cost. We want to know how much water costs. We broke
Okay,
it all.
so historically, then, we had people that wanted to get into the nits of where each piece of each salary is coming from, and then in the process, we've managed to just cloud the issue, it seems like, at least at some level.
Yeah, and then on the back end, the reports we have to fill out, justification for our building permits, and those kind of things, we have to break them out anyways.
So you'd have to break those out, but as far as what we present to the residents, I mean, I think there is some real value in it being something that's accessible, but we can talk more about it, pros and cons, but I just wanna make sure that,
Yeah.
as far as, making that sort of a migration, that we understand the implications.
The other thing we have to do, and we've been doing, is when the employees log their hours, log in specific duties that are being accomplished. For example, the lawsuit. There are specific line items within the timesheet, the electronic time program that we use that say, fugitive lawsuit, or Corbett might do inspections, Craig might do inspections for fire, or he might do water one day, and Corbett might be doing roads one day, and then lawsuit. And I mean, there's 5 or 6 different categories that they can choose. So we can go back now to the insurer and say, we've spent 300 hours on this lawsuit. Or we can go back and work on a grant and say, we've spent 55 hours in the water on this particular project, or something like that.
All right, so that's one of the advantages to our current system.
Yeah. The disadvantage is it's not, you can't really see on here who makes what, but you can go to the state website on the transparency.utah.gov and type in Stevens or Chris Helvey or Jody Stones, and you can see how much in salary we were paid, and how much in benefits we were paid.
All right.
Now, as a public comment, it's not guaranteed that that's 100% accurate either, because we upload the data. What they do with it from there is we don't know.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Well, that's just Fund 10.
Is what?
That's just Fund 10. Sorry, this is a pretty big budget hearing. I can go through pretty quick on these next couple. So capital projects, we really have nothing going on in this account. We do have some interest that is being accrued, so we added $350 in there. No big deal as revenue. Under the fire capital projects, nothing changed there. Under EMS, nothing should have changed there. Nope. Under snow plowing, nothing should have changed there. Nope. And I'm just looking real quick at these numbers down here at the bottom to see if they are the same. Roads, this one did change. So this is at a new revenue line of the UDOT grant that Carrie talked about. We did receive this money. It's cash in our account right now, 116 grand. We also put back in the $220,000 that was not used last year for West Loafer. It was just sitting in the savings account within his capital projects. That's the revenues right there, plus the 5,000 that we're transferring anyways from the general account to the roads project fund. We come down to the expenses. There's West Loafer put back in. There's the UDOT grant. We're really just netting back out the $5,000 that we're trying to save.
What line is that one? It's hard for us to see it.
Oh,
It's on your email.
I'm just looking through it.
okay, on your paperwork,
Yeah,
at the top of the page, look for the account that starts with 44 capital projects roads.
okay.
So that's the main thing that's going to change there, Carrie, is, let me see if I can make this big for a second, is the 220,000, because that was not accounted for West Loafer. So this 220,000 added as an expense and as a revenue. Otherwise, everything on your paper is the same as what's on the screen.
Well, when we actually build the road.
It costs even more. Discouraging.
We got options.
Are we good on that?
Yeah, thank you.
And then let's go to the next page, which is going to be the parks, and it should just be pretty much the same. Yep. Great. And then the water. Let's talk about water for a second. Keeping the revenues the same as far as water usage and miscellaneous services that we have, but bringing in the 94,000 from this general account that we talked about in the transfers, plopping it over into the enterprise fund so it can be utilized on there. Now, since we've talked before, we've received another $94,000, which we should probably put in now, because I did double check. We did get the money, but it has not been budgeted. I'm assuming, Carrie, it needs to go into the water also. So at this point, because it has not been received yet, I can receive it directly into the water. And right now, for today's giggle's sakes, we could put it in miscellaneous, or I could do a new fund after the meeting, but with council approval, called ARPA funds, and just call it that, so we can see it separate.
I think that'd be great.
So, okay, let me understand what you're saying. So you've currently got a line item for 94,000. We got another 94,000, so you're saying add another line for the second one?
Yeah, so this one's a transfer in from the general fund, and we have to kind of delineate that. So in the audit, we're not supposed to use general monies for enterprise funds. However, because this is money that was received from a grant that was put into the general account, we're going to transfer it over. So I'm going to keep that one that says transfer in there the way it is.
Okay.
The next one, though, Carrie's been wanting to keep this separate. We'd add another line that just said ARPA funds.
Like ARPA 1 and ARPA 2, kind of.
Well, because Chris and or Lori have to be very, their reporting mechanisms to the US Treasury are very specific, and so they're going to be able to show this exactly where it is, and it will be easier for the two of them to be able to show the US Treasury exactly where it is in our funds.
So what Carrie's saying is, yes, there's two ways that we can do this. Accounting, we probably wouldn't do it that way. We would just put it into what's called another activity and set up a separate ledger and lump the money together with everything else. However, I think, or especially tonight after a discussion, and Dave, I'm going to go back and eat my words, but I think it would be good to set up another line item just for this one. But we've got to be careful on setting too many up, because it does stay for many years, and you'll see we've got a lot of zeros in our budget just that are useless, because we have to keep those.
It does get messy. This money has to be allocated by a certain date. But if the project goes longer, it's okay, you just have to showcase that you're using it. So it could be a few years on those lines. But if the federal government wanted to come in and look for it, they'd find it quite quickly.
In our budget, they would find it very quickly.
Okay.
So thoughts, do you want me to set up a new account? Do you want me to put it under miscellaneous revenue?
Set a new one. Sounds like you need to, right? I'll make a new line.
Can you just add it to the line you already have? Or did you, is that what you said that you could not do? We have the
It's a
transfer, we have that transfer line up on 5242, but then down below
6451.
6451, you also have it there. Since it's just coming in, then would it just be an additional transfer and could be added to that transfer line?
Now, I would receive it directly into the water account this.
Okay.
Or, you know, that's a thought. That's a thought. I could receive it into the general account and change these to 188,000.
Yeah,
That would work too.
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, so we'll change this one. And then I need to go back on the general account. We'll need to change that too. So we'll change this to 188, 178. Then we'll go down to the expense. I'm gonna do the same thing, 188, 178. Okay. We'll keep finished with the water, then I'll jump back into the general account and change that. That's pretty much, I think that was the only change in the expenses was that $188,000. Okay, and the last one is sewer, and I don't believe, yes, we did have,
Impact fee.
yeah, our impact fees. So we have to pay, we collect the impact fees for PACE and then we transmit them over. And so that estimate wasn't put in there the last budget, but it's gonna be about 26. It's an in and out, no money off of the city's coffers at all.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
So when it comes to the meeting or the vote this night, I don't know if we need to put in the changes we did today or just ratify the changes that were made.
Chris, do you have any areas you're concerned about? I know we've overspent in our legal, we're way ahead of where we should be.
Yeah, let's look at
Do you
legal
have
real
an
quick.
area of concern?
We had a big month. We had $30,000 come in just from one set of attorneys. I haven't received their second bill yet.
Yeah, it's worse.
It's,
We're at $104,000 and we're only, but July, August, September, well, we don't have October's bill. We're 3 months into it. We've spent almost all the money.
so what are we gonna do about that?
I'm gonna go to Mesquite with some city monies. I'm feeling lucky. So
We're gonna.
I don't know. By the way, that was a joke, whoever's watching.
Well, I mean, I got the latest bill. It's 50 grand.
In addition to what's on there?
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it, Chris.
I have not seen it.
50,000 plus.
So we're out of money, we're done.
We're done. Lawsuit's over. So here's a breakdown. I don't know if did this new page come up?
Yeah.
This is what we spent. Oh, no, excuse me. She's already put the 50,000 in. So that does include the 50,000 there.
Okay.
Perfect.
And there's the 50,000
We
earlier.
got 50,000 left.
That'll be gone next week.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we should have had the big heavy hitters are behind this kind of, right?
Well, I can give a report on that
Okay.
after.
Put that
Yeah. All right, well, I think that's good for people to understand what we're facing with the expenses.
So we talked about a lot of different changes. Should we wait to vote until we actually get the complete budget?
There wasn't that much.
Do we feel okay about that?
While you guys go to, while we take a break or whatever we're doing, while you guys are talking about the next couple things, I'll get new budgets ready and send you right away.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Okay. All right, well, I mean, really, we could just forge through this and then adjourn as is
Yeah.
written down. I'd
Let's
rather
do
do
it.
that unless there's
Yeah.
a preference.
No, we're good.
I took my break, I'm good.
Okay, yeah, I mean, and as Carrie's demonstrated, if you feel like you need to walk out, just walk out. Okay, well, actually, Chris, you had one other thing.
BTI.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So before we start crunching numbers.
We have a new mayor. We just need to switch up the authorizers on the PTIF account. As a reminder, real quick, PTIF is just where we store most of the city's money. We're blessed to be able to house our money with Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County and Utah County, get the same rates they are. I think last month it was about 2.25%, which is really good compared to what the banks are giving us. And it's all insured. It's run by the state treasurer's office. The money's liquid, which is nice. If I put a transfer in right now, I'd have the money tomorrow. It can only be transferred to a city bank account, so it can't be transferred to anybody's personal bank account, which is nice also. But this is just adding Lori. Lori wasn't on there either. It was still Patty Kell and Mayor Prey. So this is just adding those two back.
Does Lori now have access to all of our different accounts?
She does now. Yes, we finished that today.
Okay.
All right, great. Thanks, Chris. Okay, item 9, resolution supporting the principles of Valley Visioning as outlined in the Growth and Prosperity Compact.
That's me.
Yeah.
So, last meeting, we had a presentation from David Rowley and Curtis Blair talking about Valley Visioning and some of the things that have happened. They have been going around to all of the city councils and kind of giving this update. And so it's kind of a generic resolution that says that as a city, we support the efforts that are happening and kind of collaborating together. They have had in the past, last year when they did this summit, it was just one big piece of paper, I mean a big poster kind of thing that people who said, oh, this is a compact, will sign the compact. So a lot of the mayors all signed this compact. And I said, that has no teeth to it because, I mean, not that a resolution has any teeth either, but the mayor can't represent the city by signing a compact, and most all the mayors had signed it. And so we talked about it, and now several cities have gone forth and signed this same resolution. Spanish Fork just did theirs, and so that was part of the presentation last time, but they didn't get it to us in time to put it on our agenda for a vote. So Jody put it on this time. And basically, it is part of their presentation. I hope you all got the invitation to sign up for that summit and with the free code so that you can come for free. But part of that community development grant that I wrote, I put the 6 pillars into the grant to showcase how we can be collaborative with the state, not being mandated to do certain things, but to show that as we recognize where our place is, and so connecting the city with the county with the state is actually looking to Woodland Hills as maybe a pilot program, developing a toolkit for other small cities to be able to kind of see visions of where they could possibly go, increasing revenue, which Ben is always talking about, as well as making sure we're compliant with state statutes. And so this resolution is just a generic resolution that says, yes, we support the work that was done before. And as a reminder, Woodland Hills did participate in the Valley Visioning process. Do you have any questions about the resolution?
I do,
Uh-huh.
because I wanted to be able to vote with some intelligence on this. So I went
Yes.
to their website and I really got some good details.
Yeah.
And this is a big,
Deal.
yeah, if I sign my name to this, I am saying I'm agreeing to these things, and I listed just the important ones. it would expand occupancy. They want to expand occupancy in homes.
They're not
Basically,
taking, they're not
get
taking
more
away local
people,
control.
Well,
No.
no, but they want us to look forward to doing changes that will, help put more people in tighter spaces, basically. Because if you continue as our city, as it says right here, higher unit fees on single family versus lower per unit fees on multifamily. So the idea is to provide housing for everyone, regardless of their status financially. And I kind of agree with that, it's a good thing, but they say, let's get everybody housed where there are transportation hubs.
Right, which we are not.
In their words, where appropriate, let's do all of these things that will, vision this out into the future the way we want to see it.
Yep.
So it's all good on paper, but I believe over the years, and I plan on signing my name to this because I think we have to. I mean, I just want Utah to have open space, and I want us to not just build everywhere like we're seemingly doing. So also they will push us, and I agree, we have local control, but it's an intent to push us to change our thinking. In other words, if we start building down there in the flat, multifamily, man, it's really a better deal, for a lot of reasons. Multifamily homes also build cheaper. In other words, change our building codes, don't force sprinklers everywhere in homes, because it's cheaper to build without them. And that's their goal, is to get more housing at cheaper costs. So we like fire sprinklers, and those are expensive to put in homes. So maybe where they're not in the brush, where we're not in the brush, or where it has less impact if a house catches fire.
Those might be potential changes, is what you're saying.
Those will be, we will want to start thinking that way, which I'm not inclined to do now. We need to start changing our thinking so that we can handle more people in a better way.
And that's part of why I wrote that community development grant, is to say, where are we going? We know we still have at least 600 acres in our city bounds that have no homes on them, right? We can't keep the same model that we have, because it may not be the right thing to do. When we approved years ago the Woodland Shadows, right? And we had to do smaller lot sizes. We didn't stay with the 2 acres that it was zoned at the time, because we were worried about the fire danger of somebody having to irrigate 2 acres of property. Then that would be, they wouldn't do it. It would be worse. It would be more of a fire danger. So we kind of said, let's go with a little bit smaller lots there, right? So, but again, it's getting the citizen input first and having local control over where our vision is. Recognizing what the state is doing. Now, the state just allocated a lot of money to the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget. And they've been going county to county, trying to figure out what they think the state toolbox is going to be for different sizes of municipalities. So I met with them and talked to them kind of about what our little city is and how much we want to maintain local control. We recognize that the state has some goals in mind of what they want to do, but we also want them to be aware of the specific things, like fire is important to us. And we have access with our roads to be able to get in and out, transportation needs, etc. So there's all these different kinds of things that are playing out. And I asked them if they would look to us as a pilot program to showcase how that's to be done. Now, just so you know, I also have had quite a few meetings with legislators who are proposing taking away local control. And they know that that's not going to happen. And we are pushing back very hard. And that's one good reason for us to be league members, is that we have 250 cities basically, and towns that are all on our side about local control. were pushing back. The homeowners association went to the legislators and said, we want to change some things based on homeowners association. The city said, absolutely not. The legislators are looking at the homeowners association people. So we're fighting back and saying, hey, we understand growth in our own area. Let us come up with solutions. Now, we don't want mandatory zoning. We don't want mandatory other things in place because I think our citizens will be able to come to a grips to say, do we want a 55 and older, which would be considered multifamily, right? Do we want to have some smaller lot sizes, not because we're trying to figure out just housing needs, but maybe it helps us with fire suppression. And so those are things that should remain local control. And so I guess part of it is being brought to the table. You know, it's easy to say the things that we don't like or we do like, but if you're not brought to the table, they never hear your voice. And I feel that our city, one of the things that they're trying to do is, right now a lot of things are based on the class of city. We're a 5th class city, but we live in a 2nd class county. A lot of them are trying to change regulations to be based on county size, which would make us, our rules the same as Provost. I'm fighting hard about that and saying, no. We don't think that that's right. It's not the way we should do, and they are also hanging over our heads that they would take away B&C road funds if you're not in compliance, which would really hurt Woodland Hills. And so, again, being brought to the table, saying, we understand the state is feeling this impact and they're just pushing it down the level, and we want to push back up and say, look at us as a pilot program, let us have local control. We can show how your objectives can be met, but with our way of doing things.
Well, we're not a very good example of what this envisions, in my view. You have lots all over our city that are not built on yet, and I'd like single-family homes built there. But I promise you, as soon as there is a public bus stop at our roundabout, that changes the whole idea of transportation now warrants multifamily buildings.
When they're talking about transportation hubs there, they're talking front runner stations.
But a
And
bus
so
stop
there's-
changes my fee from $13 taxi fee to the bus stop in Salem to $3. So I know that that's what they're talking about, is how much does it cost me to get from the woods to a store? As soon as I have a bus stop, it changes the buildings we're going to have in the lower part of our city, guaranteed. I hope it's our choice, because maybe we get to monitor that a little bit. Well, it won't be if they take away our road funds.
Well, that's why we're
But
gonna fight hard
But transportation is going to drive thick housing, and that's what they admit to, and because it has to.
They're not planning on transportation here at this point.
Oh, yeah,
Well, I meant on public transit, because it's not, the ROI is not there for them, a cost benefit analysis. They're really focusing on the front runner stations at this point.
Either in multifamily crowded housing right there in Salem, below the mailboxes, right on our border.
Yeah.
It's going to change.
Some of the dynamics for us, and we need to be more proactive in our response to that.
I only want to say, I won't take too long, I only want to say, it's, me signing this is changing the future of Woodland Hills in a way that we won't always have total control over. It just growth, this is a vision of growth in the future that to me is unstoppable.
It's coming.
It is,
Whether
and
we participate or not.
so we won't always be, as soon as there's a bus stop or anything else down there that can transport people to their jobs, this place it's gonna be forced to change from single-family 1-acre lots to big, just big housing units that are cheaper for families to move into.
I think Salem's zoning and their building, it will impact us probably more than our own.
That's true.
And,
'cause they're right there.
and we have no say in what they're doing, and that does concern me. But again, I think we have the ability to be proactive and to showcase, at least in my discussions with them, with
But
the
you're
state.
signing this, agreeing to be less single family. I mean, you're just saying, I see the growth and I've got to crowd more people into areas that can support it. And we have an area of our city that eventually, it will have transportation. It will have the things we don't have now that will help cheaper housing be created. Just to get more people in a smaller space. It'll just happen. But to me, I want to remain a mountain community, 1 acre minimum. I want her to keep 2 acres. Wayne remembers my arguments about changing some of these 2 acre lots to 1 acre. Because it just changes things.
That
And
might be
it's-
mandated to us,
well,
and that's why
yeah.
we're trying to show.
Yeah.
That's why I
So-
wanna do these focus groups with different areas of our city to showcase how do we maintain our quality of life. That's our #1 issue in our city, really, is maintaining our quality of life. Why did people move here? Why did all of us move here, right? We want to maintain that, but at the same time, we have to be sustainable as a city, on several levels. And if potential legislation comes that mandates things, do we have the mechanisms in place to showcase that we can be compliant and still have local control? And that is a very difficult discussion to have, and yet I think it's possible because we can put some things in place and we continue to have good relationships with those at the state level, not just legislators, but those in the governor's cabinet who are over these policies and decisions that are being made. I think we keep with that and they recognize it so that when they go to a city, I was able to really make a good argument about the 5th class city and the 2nd class county, and they all went, what? And then they changed a vote just from that conversation. And I think we just keep being at that table to showcase Woodland Hills is a unique place, and it's a place that we love, and we try our best to mitigate our fires. We try our best to give the other services that we provide, and we work hard for really, even with us, I mean, other cities, council gets paid a lot of money. We do all of our things for basically free. And yet, look at the changes we've had that are really positive. Not all change is bad, but I think we have the opportunity to showcase that even in where Spanish Fork or Salem are growing like crazy, we may have some growth, but we might not have it as intense as they are having it.
Well, as David knows, I'm concerned about residents moving to our city who don't pay property taxes. That's our only income. And the more of those we have, the more broke Ben's gonna be. And he's gonna need more dirt. It's a serious, I'm telling you the
Well,
truth.
I didn't know my income
structure,
was tied to the
but any
Well, now, let's kind
Property
of
tax.
focus this back though, because we're talking the compact here, right? I mean,
Right.
you're talking really long-term
What I'm
issues.
signing is the long term.
Right, no, I agree, and if you don't feel you can sign it in good conscience, then you should vote against it. But I don't think that we need to tackle the density of Woodland Hills here tonight. I think that we just need to
But
decide.
it will affect us.
Yeah,
That's
no,
not-
I don't
I
disagree.
don't
All
want to say
growth
that,
will
and I
affect
didn't
this.
want
Yeah,
to
yeah.
stir it up, but just be aware of what you're signing.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
I'm getting your points.
End of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for dragging me into that, appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, Carrie, you're on a roll.
Yeah, discussion of
Emergency Management Department proposal.
So this is another thing, we went
You
through
get
all
5
that
minutes.
work to have our committee in place, only to realize that a committee is not really what we needed. And we thought we were coming into the right mix in putting it as a committee, as they've met with the deputy, and he met with the mayor, and we met with the county emergency management, and also looked at other things. Emergency management should really be a department, just like the fire department and the EMT department, because there's some things that would put some burden just administratively on Jody to have to record, to have to do all this. Every time the fire department has training, they don't have to have an open meeting with a agenda and minutes and everything else. We're gonna be doing a lot of training. It would be under emergency management would be the department. That neighborhood watch program would be one aspect. Which the preparedness would be another component of that. Be Ready, Woodland Hills kind of thing. Like we were talking, we would be able to put some of those other things under there. We would qualify to be able to get grant money for different emergency management projects that are happening if we were a department. With that being said, again, the deputy talked to the mayor, talked with me and said, Carrie, can we do this? So tonight's discussion is only to just lay that idea out there. The deputy is going to come with our current chair of the emergency management, we've been calling it Community Watch Committee. And if we change it, it would be Emergency Management Department. And we're gonna come and we are going to give a presentation next council meeting about how this would work, and then have a vote on it next time. This is just for the discussion to get out there, so that if you have additional questions, I'm like Ben, I'm always looking to how can we bring revenue into our city, or at least get some of the things we do paid for. So I think I have told you before, but Peter Quittner and I both had, he's the county emergency manager, we both had this idea together and coming about how can we better prepare our cities. And because the county has a significant amount of money and they have their county plan, but all of the smaller cities have never really had a true emergency management plan. Part of it, which we noticed during the fires, is because we didn't have a written plan in place, we had to go through a lot of other hoops when we were signing our federal papers for mitigation funding. So Peter and I, we went to the county and we were able to secure $1 million of the county's ARPA funds. We went to the state and asked for the same amount, and they said, we think $1 million's enough. So Peter and I have been working and hired 2 people on the county level to be who are trained emergency managers, and they are working with that fund to have every city it's a 3-year pilot program, every city in our county have a FEMA approved emergency management plan. We don't have to pay for it, but we are the beneficiary of that. And so the mayor and I and Aaron Gilbert and the deputy will be attending a meeting on the 1st, and they will be proposing how we're going to use that $1 million to help us get our emergency management plan. We're one of the first ones, and that's why it came up to us at the last emergency management meeting of Carrie. A committee isn't going to do it. You have to have a department, so that all of the funding and all of the different agreements that have to come in place, just like fire department has some interlocal agreements, etc. And what's the other thing called, Jody? SEP, SOP? SOP. That we can have that all in place as a department. So I'm just throwing it out there, and then we'll give the presentation next time.
Great, thank you. Okay. Corbett, Public Works and Building.
I've got the asphalt company scheduled for at least one of the overlays on Woodland Hills Drive for Friday. I've talked to Jody about doing an Everbridge. I've also talked to the contractors that are using the west end, or the end of West Loafer, to make sure that that road's open so that we can get people in and out. But it's coming.
Thank you. Thanks for your efforts there.
And where will that overlay be on Woodland Hills Drive?
It'll start about 945 south, which I think is
We're gonna start at
Johnson. or?
Yeah, we'll ask people anywhere from the intersection of Oak and Woodland Hills Drive to Loafer and Woodland Hills Drive to use alternate routes. And then it'll just we'll notify all those people in that area, including
People in Brown
View
Hollow
Circle.
Yeah.
And
Stay home. Go up.
It's
and
just the
then
end of
down.
Woodland Hills.
Ben's
It's Woodland
created a
Hills.
nice path by the water tank.
they'll still be able to get out at the intersection of Woodland Hills Drive and Oak. It's just everyone past that. So starting at
So really the mayor will be able to get.
9:45.
I've already been
9:45
watched
south.
I was gonna say,
It's on
that
garbage
last
day.
year. That's week, I bet.
Okay, it's fine.
Just plan it.
Come down Skylake.
I got 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
I've gone up Skylake, just so you know. One day I was like, I just want to try it.
Oh, is that why I got that email? Some teal Jeep just blew.
There's no chain on there anymore, it's just wide open.
We're working
They're
on
currently
that.
inviting you to make
Yeah.
that trip.
After we had school buses going up there, we definitely need some other.
Partway up.
No, the bus.
No, it went all the way. It
Okay.
went the whole way.
All right, Corbett, anything else? Okay, thanks. All right, Councilmember Hilliard.
We met with the solid waste district, and really predominantly we just talked about, we're doing better with our recycle contamination levels. So if we can just keep working on that, again, if anybody even watches these things, if you can shake it and it's not sounding like a rattler, you can chuck it cardboard wise in the recycling bin. So pull your pizza crust out and you're good to go.
That's the best part.
Yay.
Yes, yes. So if you don't like your pizza crust, drop them off at the mayor's house. He likes them.
Yeah.
Throw them out to the deer, they'll eat it.
Don't feed the deer. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Doral, 911 Special
There's
Services.
all
Director.
sorts of rule breaking tonight.
The last meeting was one I sent you an email on with the minutes when I was missing from this meeting. We didn't hold one last month, and our next meeting is after tomorrow, so it's a great group down there with dispatch. They competed rigorously for the Orem contract for dispatching. Orem went with Provo at twice the cost, and so I'll be interested in knowing in our next meeting why, or if that contract's really finalized with Provo, because they used our dispatch center to get cheaper, try to get cheaper prices from Provo. But anyways, long story, and it's fascinating to hear the wrestling match going on there, but.
And we're just pawns in it.
Yeah, but they are giving us good service in my opinion, so.
Good.
I'll have another meeting in a couple days.
All right, thank you. All right, Janet?
So Saturday from, it was kind of like 9 to 4 for me, but it was from 10 to 3 at the animal shelter. Not a big deal except for that during COVID, a lot of people got pets and then they decided they didn't want to keep them anymore. And they've been dumping off cats and dogs everywhere, and the shelter's been at capacity. And never before had they had to put down dogs that were adoptable, but they actually had to start doing that. Usually they just put them down if they're vicious or can't get along, or diseased or something. But so they'd heard that I had done Woodland Hills Days, and so in about 3 weeks we put together a Barktober. I didn't think anyone would come. I didn't think very many would come. I was super worried. We had a line at the door. It was awesome. I have to say I was probably a little teary-eyed. Anyway, we adopted out 32 pets. So dogs and cats, a lot of people, we had music, we had vendors, we had food for people that wanted to come. And most of the people that are on the board are police chiefs of each city. And so they really did a good job of advertising it and getting it on their community pages and putting flyers around. And we had a line most of the time. It's a good thing, there were a few dogs that kept going out for walks and then they'd get brought back in, and I was like, man, if that one doesn't get adopted, I might have to take it home. But luckily they got adopted, so it was a good day.
Fun.
Oh, cool.
Right. Well, at Barktober, that's Jeeves.
Yeah,
Once
that's
again, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
They should probably do that as an annual event.
Well, I'm trying to convince them because of staffing shortages, they're not open all on Saturday. So I'm trying to get them to maybe shift their schedule, we're gonna talk about it at the next board meeting, and maybe at least one Saturday a month be open. I feel like they would do better, especially right now where they have so many.
Well, and I got a few calls from people saying, cats are really free?
Yeah, cats were
And
free
that
and
was,
dogs
like,
were 20.
amazing.
And some of the dogs are usually like, some of those, they had purebred dogs. They had
$20.
some really cool dogs and they were $20, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I told some people in Salt Lake about it, and they couldn't believe that was happening. And so, it was great.
And it was neat, they let people, there were a few people that they weren't sure. One lady, she had other pets at home. Anyway, they let them take them home. They just said bring them back by 2:30, so they filled out a form, and they got to take the pet home and make sure that it would get along with the other animals. They made sure it had its shots and everything before it went out the door, but then they just had to be back by 2:30. And only one came back and said, no, it's not gonna work. But all the rest it worked, so that was cool.
That is
And then trunk or treat on the 31st at the Stake Center from 6 to 8. I did email Carrie a flyer, so.
Yep, I got that.
So we should see that going up, and,
Has the roundabout sign been changed? My wife was telling me, no, it's the 29th, and I was like, I don't think
no,
so.
it
That's
says the
because
31st.
originally, before we had our discussion, the Maple Canyon Board put it in their newsletter as the 29th.
Oh.
And they've changed it since then.
Who did that? Ridiculous.
And since then, they have changed it, but for the people who look at the original one, that's why. But they have,
Yeah, it is,
did
it
change
is the Monday night, and
Yeah.
the signs are right at the roundabout, because I personally fixed them.
And we put it on, we updated.
I picked them up and, changed the signs.
Yep.
And then brought them back to the city, and they put them up.
Who's doing our signs now that Zach's not around?
Mike did it.
Well, Mike put them up for us.
But who changes them when we need changes?
I did.
Well,
Zach can still do it.
Janet did that. We'll work on that. Janet, can you get me that flyer though, and I'll get it on the city website?
Yeah, I'll email it to you when I get home.
Zach
If
can
you
still
get
do it.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Janet. All right, Carrie?
Yeah, the Utah Lake Commission, we got an update on the water quality study. The Division of Water Quality is doing some things that it's been going on for quite a few years and continues to go on. Sometimes people think that it's only about the algae blooms, but there's so many other issues. Water quality is actually really, really good at the lake, before a natural lake. But they're always doing testing, and there's, at any given time, there's lots and lots of studies. Every university in the state and others are doing studies. We got an update on the Spanish Fork wastewater treatment plant groundbreaking. Did you go to, now that you're in solid waste, so they're doing a new wastewater treatment plant. There is, of course, drought conditions. We're all really worried about drought, and as the lake dries up, our lake comes from Spanish Fork River is one, Hobble Creek, both feed in. Jordan River fills out into Salt Lake, that goes into the Great Salt Lake. They're very, very worried about all of that water flow. The Great Salt Lake is one of the top concerns nationally, because if it continues to dry up, that's a toxic lake bed, and that would then blow all over that toxic dust. And so they're really working hard on trying to find ways to mitigate that. But Utah Lake evaporation level is really high. There's just, because it's so shallow, but also has such a wide area. So those are some of the concerns going in, and how we're going to have conservation efforts, and they want all of the cities to maybe look into implementing some conservation efforts. I think we do pretty good, because we're one of the few cities that has a water metering, a tiered watering system. So when people come in and say, I can't believe my bill is so high, you can say, well, next month don't water as much, right? But at the same time, what I tell the state is, we want people to irrigate if they have property enough to be help with fire suppression. And we don't want to become a tinderbox, but we also don't want to overuse. Salt Lake County actually saved 3 billion gallons of water this last year in conservation methods. So one of the things that we might consider is, for those who want to put sod in, is actually start teaching which sod blends are better, or replacing the sod blend you have now with a more drought resistant. So those are things that we talked about. Of course, we're always talking about treatments and shoreline restoration. We also talked about at that, again, I'm gonna bring up the Growth and Prosperity Summit. There's going to be quite a robust panel discussion on the lake with a lot of different sites coming to the table, and I'm looking forward to hearing that on how that's going to impact us as a county. And I don't think they're going to be discussing any more of potential building on the lake, but other concerns that are being brought. So that will be one of the topics on the 27th. So again, if you would like to attend, I sent you the link with the free code so that you can all attend for free. Not every city got that, just so you know.
Thank you, and thank you for being so well connected, because that does make a big difference for our city. Okay, Dave?
Yeah, we haven't met, so I don't have any report.
Okay, perfect. And then for me, I went to the SCSD meeting this morning. Resources are a real challenge. There's just a lot of need and there's not a lot of resources. So it's discussed regularly. I don't know if there's an easy solution, but it could translate into some higher rates for sure, just because demand is outpacing the supply.
Is there a supply, I mean, are we facing a could there be brownouts or?
Well, that was a question that I asked about today, because, you know, we've got a few different resources through which we buy the power. A couple of them are going away. One of them is actually Lake Powell. As the water levels drop, that becomes unusable as a power generation source. And then there are a couple of others that are kind of slated to go offline. There are some small nuclear facilities that they want to bring online, but that's not for 5 years on the most ambitious schedule. So that does leave us a little bit vulnerable to, I mean, like solar and wind, it helps, but it's no substitute for some of these more robust power generation.
They should do an incentive and everyone put solar on their house.
Well, SCSD doesn't like solar.
I know they
No,
don't.
they're fine with it.
They limit.
Yeah.
Yeah, they.
I'm still getting people
I
calling
get
me
ripped
about
off
that.
I know, but I have asked about that specifically, and they have said there is no objection to solar, so it's maybe a messaging issue, but as far as I'm being told, there's no.
I know when we put it on, there was a limit, we could only put so much, and we would only get.
You can only put 10,000 watts right now.
Right.
And then we would only get a percentage back, they do limit, but anyway, I'm just saying maybe that's an option.
Well, and if they are limiting it, it's only because of
The solar.
the strain that it puts on the other infrastructure. So I don't think that it's just an arbitrary limitation, it's something that if there is, but the moratorium that you've spoken of before
They've gone
that's
away.
gone, yeah.
Can you pitch them? We'll lease some of our hillside land for solar farms.
Yeah,
They can come put them on there, pay us
About an
for the
retention
land.
credit,
And then, maybe get a kickback as well,
right?
for residents of Woodland Hills.
you know, they actually have been looking at some solar farm options, and the land was a big consideration. I mean, they generate a lot of heat, and I don't know that that's what we.
Always good when
Corbett?
How about micro hydro?
Michael Hydro,
Micro hydro.
Which is,
something,
Well, in the summertime, you run 35 million gallons a month from the tanks down through town. Why not put a turbine? Why not put an inline turbine in that pipe?
Let's talk more about that. I think that
able
would
to
be a
generate
really good
electricity
idea.
on
for
this
the
way
city,
down.
save our residents some money.
Yeah,
That would be
And
good.
we're not-
Or income generation for the city.
Yeah.
Cover those
I think
legal
that-
fees.
Would it pull some strain off of our PRVs too?
It would. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it takes energy out of the water. It takes energy out of it in order to do it. But if you put them right in front of a PRV, the PRV still does its
I thought
job.
about doing that in my home.
You don't risk of, over pressurizing.
Mm-hmm.
And it,
SESD would bound to bankroll that.
Well, I mean, it's certainly worth asking. I think that would be, an option. I mean, the solar farm, I mean, I can ask about that too. I just see-
No, we're just being facetious.
Well, I mean, it's something, I don't know what the land needs are. I
It
imagine probably more
is.
than what we need. It's what?
The mountain probably destroys.
Yeah, we don't-
efficiency.
Yeah,
We're
it's
in a
ugly.
shadow
Have
for
you
a lot of
driven
days.
past one of those?
Mm-hmm.
When it's acres and acres and acres, it's so ugly. You cannot tell me that is green. I am sorry. It is so.
Why they put it out in the middle of
It is
nowhere?
not green. It is awful. I want the fields back. I want
Alright.
those fields back.
But I'll ask about that, Corbin, so let's talk more about that.
Well, a farmer
Cog
can
and
make a lot
Mag,
more on a
that
solar
meeting is
farm than he
canceled,
can
so-
on planting crops.
Nothing's.
It's all about planning.
All right, upcoming items for, city council meetings, anything that, anybody wants to throw out there?
I've already given my stuff to Jody so far.
Question for Corbett, has anything changed to our water? I've had citizens that tell me that they're getting some dirty filters that are a different color than they used to be down on my road. I don't know if there's anything changed or did you?
not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
If I'm not aware of it.
easy answer then, okay.
So one thing to piggyback off that a little bit is I had the opportunity to go with Corbett when he was showing me where to knock stuff down and everything, but he gave me a tour of the well. If you haven't had a Corbett tour of the well, you have to.
I've done it for a while.
It's brilliant. No, Corbett I think likes to show off.
It's a cool place.
He doesn't
It
do it
is.
very well or very often, but this well is awesome. It is one impressive structure and operation.
Weren't we there the day it went live, one evening?
Yeah.
It was cool. Yeah, you were too.
We had that little,
It was a fun tour.
It's
See,
a
this
world-class
first
well.
water that came out of the,
Yeah, sprayed you probably.
and I have to say, I was blown away by how much water came out of that.
It is amazing, especially with his new fuel system he's putting in right now.
Anyway,
It's pretty cool.
good stuff.
Great. Okay, then let's adjourn, reconvene at 9:10 and, finish our business.
Right. Didn't somebody just compliment you on short meetings?
Yeah, no kidding.
And better
You're supposed to
flow.
be too, so-
The ice cream's off the table.
Wow.
it shouldn't take too much on the next one,
This was,
next page.
looking at this agenda,
Yeah.
this was a heavy agenda.
I was gonna ask Jody to let me know next time if it looks a little
Well,
loaded.
budget takes a long time.
Thanks,
to
everyone.
Yeah. We wanted to make sure.
I don't know if you can
thorough.
kick it.
All right, we will call tonight's city council meeting to order. And, Councilmember Kinnison, if you would please lead us in a pledge, and then Councilmember Hunt, if you will offer the invocation.
Everyone will stand and repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we're so grateful that we can meet together as council members this evening to discuss city business, and please help us as we are making decisions and discussing items that we will have all the citizens in mind, and to also think about the future of our beautiful community and help us to make wise decisions. And we're so grateful for the opportunity that we have to serve and to help each other and help the members of our community. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, public comments. Anyone here? And anyone online? All right, and we will close the public comment portion of our meeting. Item 17, city council meeting minutes from September 23rd,
I want to
2022.
approve those.
by Councilmember Pratt, second by Councilmember Malkovich. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Item 18, ordinance adopting the amended fiscal year
Oh.
budget. Chris,
Did
did
you
you
get
get
that?
those?
Yeah, he said it
He
before we
sent it.
quit.
I read it.
Okay,
I moved to
He
approve that.
highlighted it too, so that we could see.
I forgot to look.
okay. Well, we've got a motion to approve by Councilmember Pratt,
I'll second it.
seconded by Councilmember Lunt. Councilmember Lunt, Carrie, I'll give you a chance to read it while we go around the horn. Councilmember Lunt,
Yes.
Councilmember Kinnison,
Yes.
Councilmember Pratt,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilliard,
Yes.
Councilmember Malkovich.
Yes.
Motion carried. Item 19, resolution designating, or approving designated employees to have access to city PTIF accounts.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Councilmember Hilliard,
I'll second it.
seconded by Councilmember Lunt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Item 20, decision taking dirt at the water tanks.
I'll make a motion.
Councilmember Hilliard makes a motion,
I'll second.
seconded by Councilmember Malkovich. Councilmember Malkovich,
Yes.
Councilmember Hilliard,
Yes.
Councilmember Pratt,
No.
Councilmember Kinnison,
No.
Councilmember Lunt.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Item 21, resolution supporting the principles of Valley Visioning as outlined in the Growth and Prosperity Compact.
So, Carrie, I'm wondering if you would be against us tabling this for this meeting and voting on it next meeting, just so that we each have time that we can actually go to their website and kind of get a better feel for what they're actually proposing.
Yes, that's fine. And I can send you a copy of the compact as well, that Mayor Craig did sign the compact last year. And then it will kind of show you just the differences and why the resolution for cities.
Okay.
And if you do
Yeah, I
have
don't have time to go to
questions,
the website. I don't
yeah.
And I don't think that we need to add it to another work session. I think that you
Yeah.
guys can do your homework and then we'll just vote on it next week.
Yeah, I
Jody,
think so.
is that- or not, maybe next week, next meeting. Okay, then we'll table that.
Yeah.
Just so we can look at it a little more.
So Pratt's making the motion
I
and,
make a motion that we table that.
okay.
Oh, we have to vote on that.
Second.
Yeah, we have to vote on the tabling.
All right.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilmember Lunt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is tabled. All right, I would like to enter a closed session under the condition that we end by 9:30. Because I have a long night yet ahead of me and I can't go into a midnight closed session.
Do you have any more Red Bulls for him?
I'll make that motion by end of 9:30.
Let's
close session.
All right, we are, I guess we do need a motion. So motion by Councilmember Hilliard,
I'll second it.
seconded by Councilmember Pratt. All in favor?
Aye.
9:30.
Yeah, aye, 9:30. Okay,
So are you saying that you're committing each of us to not speak?
I'm just saying that if we can do this,
Quick debrief.
let's do it, yeah, quick, and then we can,
Quick and dirty.
yeah.
Be back on.
All right,
I'll make a motion to resume council meeting.
okay, motion by Councilmember Hilliard.
Move we adjourn.
Well, we gotta vote on.
I'll second
You're
it.
getting ahead of yourself there.
Okay, now you can go.
Okay, wait, so seconded by Councilmember Lunt, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
And now, I move we adjourn.
okay, motion to adjourn,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Pratt, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Okay, I like the three motions in one.
I'll
I make a
support it.
motion to go home 3 hours ago.